All right, we do have, Senator Bradley will be about a half hour late. So with that, I will start the hearing on Senate Bill 352 and the prime sponsor, Senator.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the Health and Human Services Committee. For the record, my name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Senate District 14, comprising the towns of Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn. And I have this morning for your consideration Senate Bill 352 FNA, which seeks to establish an early detection cancer screening pilot program for active and retired firefighters. Madam Chair, I can't emphasize how important this is. We have done things in the past, but I think we need to really look at the prevention side here. We know from studies that firefighters are getting a lot of cancers because of the chemicals, excuse me, and just the hazards of the job that they are exposed to. So I have a 8 points that I'd like to go through with all of you this morning. The first is occupational hazard awareness. Firefighters are exposed to numerous carcinogens during firefighting operations, increasing their risk of developing cancer substantially. A cancer screening program would raise awareness even more about these occupational hazards and emphasize the importance of early detection. Madam Chair, I can't emphasize how important this is. Um, we all understand the dangers associated with PFAS. I live in a community that has been affected by PFAS in the water, and my family has been on bottled water for almost 2 years. And I don't think people realize that some of the operational clothing that firefighters have to wear contain PFAS. So they are exposed to this chemical every time they put on these mandatory clothes, and they don't have a choice. It's their only option. So again, I can't emphasize how important the occupational hazard awareness is. Early detection saves lives. We all know that. We all know it's better to find out early because it becomes more treatable. And implementing regular screenings can help identify potential cases of cancer among firefighters, enabling prompt medical intervention and potentially saving lives. This is also about job-related health support. Firefighters put their health and their life on the line to protect others. A cancer screening program demonstrates a commitment to the well-being of these brave individuals, providing them with the necessary tools and resources to monitor and address potential health risks associated with their professions. It can also reduce healthcare costs. Early detection and intervention can contribute to lower healthcare costs in the long run. By identifying and treating cancers at an early stage, the financial burden on both firefighters and healthcare systems can be reduced compared to the costs associated with advanced stage cancer treatment. Improve the quality of life. Timely cancer screenings can lead to less invasive treatment options and better overall outcomes. By prioritizing the health of firefighters, we not only extend their life expectancy, but also enhance their quality of life during and after treatment. Long-term data-driven decision-making comes into play here because the cancer screening program would generate valuable data on the prevalence of cancer among firefighters. This information will be used to refine safety protocols, enhance protective gear, and implement preventive measures to further minimize cancer risks in the firefighting profession. It can also enhance occupational safety standards. Implementing a cancer screening program sends a powerful message about the commitment to occupational safety within the fire service. It encourages the establishment and enforcement of stricter safety standards, ensuring a healthier work environment for current and future generations of firefighters. We know we're having difficulty getting people to go into these fields. And if we can send the message that we care about you, we care about your health, we care about long-term health, and getting you into the best work environment we possibly can, I think would send a message to individuals that are looking to go into fire service. And finally, again, the long-term benefits of firefighter retention. Prioritizing the health and well-being of firefighters through a cancer screening program can contribute to higher job satisfaction and retention rates. Firefighters who feel supported in their health and safety are more likely to stay in the profession, ensuring the continuity of experienced and skilled personnel within the fire departments. At this point, Madam Chair, I will conclude my testimony. You should, I think they're going to pass out something like this to you if you don't already have it. Please take the time to look at this. I do think this is vitally important for the state, and it's always better to be proactive than reactive. And this is proactive. We're helping them really take charge of their health. And it is vitally important. And so thank you for your consideration of this legislation this morning. And I will try to answer any questions. The experts are behind me. So,
Got it. Any questions from the committee?
and there is an amendment that I had received, that does a few tweaks to the bill, and I'm sure as it goes through the process, there'll be a few more. So hopefully, they can address the amendment as well. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
All right, I don't have a sign-up sheet. She's getting it. It's for 352.
New interns.
Okay, I am going to call Brian Rill first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Brian Rill. I'm the president of the Professional Firefighters of New Hampshire. And next to me here is one of our district vice presidents, Jed Carpentier. I'm also a fire captain in the city of Portsmouth, and Jed is a fire lieutenant in the town of Hampton. Our organization represents approximately 2,000 active and retired professional firefighters in the Granite State. We're here today to shed light on a devastating reality. Firefighter occupational cancer continues to tear through our ranks, claiming the health and lives of those who selflessly serve the citizens of our great state. 75% of firefighters added to the International Association of Firefighters Fallen Firefighter Memorial in 2019 died from occupational cancer. 75%. Cancer has become far and above the #1 killer of firefighters. We're here to tell you today, and I don't know if you saw the group of firefighters in the lobby that are here to tell you the same, that we've never accepted this as the narrative, and we'll do anything in our power to change it. Kyle Jamison, Darren Sabin, Jeff Bokum, Sarah Fox, Steve McKenna, Jess Wyman, Dan Pasula. These are just a few of our friends that couldn't join us today for this hearing. Their memories are etched in our hearts as recent symbols of the profound sacrifices made to New Hampshire communities. Each one of these firefighters, like so many others, fulfilled their oath to serve and protect, and in exchange were given a terminal occupational cancer diagnosis and died in active duty. When a firefighter swears an oath, they're aware of the many inherent risks of the job, but the risks, much like the complexity of our profession, continue to be ever-changing. In today's age, many modern-day textiles and building materials are engineered using polycarbonates that off-gas when burned, compounding the risks of an already hazardous profession. To make matters worse, many of these materials are coated in synthetic chemical compounds known as PFAS, or forever chemicals, widely known for imposing a variety of health effects on the human body. In recent years, scientists have identified the prevalence of these chemicals in firefighter PPE, marketed for use as durable water and oil repellents. This means that the very gear that firefighters are mandated to wear to protect themselves from heat, fire, and smoke is in fact killing us. It's an unnecessary and unacceptable risk. The International Association of Firefighters continues to fight back against manufacturing and regulatory agencies that fail to acknowledge the presence of these chemicals, resulting in firefighters across the country, like those in this room and those in the lobby today, taking matters into their own hands. And we're asking for your help. Routine cancer screenings are proven to be the gold standard for education, prevention, and mitigation of occupational cancer. They promote early detection and offer potentially life-saving interventions for firefighters while reducing long-term financial exposure for employers, employees, and insurance companies. Fire departments across the state have developed best practice guidelines and policies to reduce the exposure to these cancer-causing agents. And while we've seen a significant cultural shift in the fire service to eliminate these exposures, firefighters continue to die from cancer at an alarming rate. The plan we bring before you today is not one that we're hoping will reduce these firefighter cancer deaths, but rather one that has been tested and proven successful. Each one of these diagnostic tests detects cancer signals throughout various parts of the body. A simple blood draw has been proven effective at identifying 21 possible cancer signal origins and detect nearly 50 types of cancer throughout the body. Although this testing is cutting edge, it falls short in some sensitivities when it comes to detecting high-profile cancers such as bladder, kidney, and thyroid cancer, all cancers that firefighters are susceptible to. These cancers can be detected utilizing an ultrasound diagnostic, which is a safe, non-invasive diagnostic test that is the gold standard in detecting abnormal tissue growth at an early stage, often before symptoms arise. This test complements the blood testing to be most effective in areas where blood testing may fall short. In addition, ultrasound has been proven effective in detecting abnormal cardiac function. While the lung CT is most effective in detecting abnormalities in the lungs, it is also known to detect bladder, colorectal, kidney, ovarian, and stomach cancer, depending on the scope of the test. The sum of these diagnostic tests represents a comprehensive approach to early detection, and all tests should be considered essential in obtaining the full picture. It is our goal to provide the totality of these tests to every full-time firefighter in the state of New Hampshire so that we can compile the critical data needed that will allow us to build a long-term program that is effective and impactful. We believe wholeheartedly in this program, so much so that we have worked diligently to raise well over $100,000 in funds through sponsorships as well as our own organizations to screen the first 100 firefighters, demonstrating our commitment to this initiative. We believe that our vision is revolutionary and our mission is pure. We will continue to channel our energy, our grief, and our anger into a force for change, and will stop at nothing to protect our fellow firefighters. We'll continue to advocate for PFAS-free alternatives for firefighter PPE. We'll demand transparency in materials used in manufacturing, and we'll push for immediate implementation of early detection measures. Our firefighters deserve more than words. They deserve a swift and decisive response. As we honor Kyle, Darren, Jeff, Sarah, Steve, Jess, Dan, and the many other heroic firefighters that we've lost, we are hopeful that their legacy will propel us towards purposeful and meaningful change, and it all starts here today. Supporting this bill sends a simple yet powerful message. New Hampshire protects those that protects New Hampshire. We ask that you join us in this initiative and put New Hampshire on the right side of history by supporting Senate Bill 352 as amended. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Senator
Thank you.
Prentice.
And good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. So first of all, as you read that list of those that can't be with us today, I personally know Steve, Kyle, Jeff, and Sarah. And I just am really struck at that list. Actually, and Jess. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important to put the real human face on this. But my question for you, and I think it's just a matter of operation, so I understand this, that once the program is up and running, that will you set these screenings up as like almost like in health fairs, or at different departments, or within regions in the state? How will this be deployed? That's all.
Sure. Thank you for your question, Senator. And as part of the program outline, you'll see that we have the intention of creating a non-legislative committee that would work towards all of the logistics of how this would function. What I would tell you is it has not yet been fully decided as to whether or not this would occur throughout the state. But we do have, and I know they'll be speaking later, the support of the Department of Safety in the ability to utilize their facility at the Fire Academy to bring in the vendors that would be able to perform these tests.
Okay, perfect. It talks about within 90 days being able to establish this and make these determinations. So always thinking regionally. All right, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other question? I do have one. Brian, did you put this amendment together?
Yes.
Is this going to impact the fiscal note? Because it says 1,300 per individual. Is that included in the fiscal note of 5 million?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
The fiscal note should not change. This was just more of a clerical amendment. And I believe it was the elimination of the word rules, because our intent was to, again, set up this committee where we could establish the parameters of testing and then bring it to the governor and leadership for approval rather than have to go through the JELCAR process.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Sean Toomey and Justin Cutting, Director, thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Sean Toomey, and I serve as the State Fire Marshal, and I'll let Justin do a quick intro.
Justin Cutting, Director of Fire Standards and Training and EMS.
We're going to be short, I think, today. There's several people I know that want to speak after us. In general, the Department of Safety supports this legislation effort. As you've heard already, cancer is a significant concern and threat to firefighter safety. It's a national issue, and you've heard today it is hitting home in New Hampshire. They shared a short list of names that have recently passed from cancer. So the U.S. Fire Administration held a summit in 2023, and cancer screening was identified as one of the 7 critical factors that need to be addressed at the national level to address firefighter safety and survival. And we believe that this program would be a great step in that initiative here in the state. Sorry, go ahead.
If you could move over to this side and not block the door, that would be great. Go ahead, sorry.
Thanks for your fire marshal activities. Appreciate it. Yeah, I will. Yeah, right after the meeting, we'll take care of that. So, the Department of Safety stands ready to help facilitate the process through the use of the facilities to make the program a success if it's able to move forward. So, I want to be brief. I think it's a great initiative. It's a great step to helping our New Hampshire Fire Service, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none? Director, did you want to say anything?
I think Marshall captured it all. Thank you.
Okay,
We're going to share some written testimony. We'll email it to you this afternoon.
great.
Thank you.
Scott Mullins?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the committee for this opportunity. My name's Scott Mullins. I'm here on behalf of 344,000 International Association of Firefighters members. I'm also the state president of the North Carolina Professional Firefighters. And I stand before you today to advocate for your support of the proposed act establishing early detection cancer screening pilot programs for your active and retired firefighters. These courageous individuals dedicate their lives to protecting our communities, and as you have previously demonstrated by passing presumptive cancer legislation, it is a moral obligation to prioritize their well-being. Studies consistently demonstrate the cost effectiveness of cancer screening and early treatment. And this initiative is an investment in the well-being of those who selflessly protect our communities. By investing in early detection programs, such as this proposed pilot program, the financial burden associated with advanced and more complex treatments can be avoided. 6 other states have filed similar legislation. The idea is not to use this presumptive cancer pot of money. All eyes are on New Hampshire right now, for political reasons, but the fire service is watching this right now. This is big time legislation. It's forward thinking. It sends a powerful message to the rest of the nation that New Hampshire cares about its firefighters and is here to support them in any way possible. I ask you to consider the long-term benefits of this program. As Brian read the names, I just sat there and I thought, what if? What if you would have passed this legislation earlier? What if other states would have passed this legislation earlier? How many names would not have been on the wall in Colorado Springs? 70+% of our nation's bravest pass from cancer. And if we could just do something like this to help prevent those names from going up on the wall, our loved ones falling, then we should do it. So I ask you to consider the long-term benefits, and together with the Professional Firefighters of New Hampshire and the International Association of Firefighters, let's take a proactive step towards safeguarding the health of those who risk everything for our safety and make a responsible financial choice that aligns with the best interest of our citizens and the sustainability of our healthcare system, because they're worth it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
No, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Chris Wyman and Ryan Cashin, did you want to speak together? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Then Chris Wyman. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Chris Wyman, and I'm the first vice president of the New Hampshire State Firemen's Association. And I'm here today to stand before you and support this bill from a couple of different perspectives. One, we represent both career and volunteer firefighters throughout the state. And this is a necessary first step to prevent the long-term effects, both health and for families, to prevent, and help save firefighters going forward. Bear with me a little bit because I'm also here before you for something else. Not only being a 30-year member of the New Hampshire Fire Service, less than 60 days ago, I lost my wife to occupational cancer. She was a Nashua firefighter for over 26 years. And last January, we became aware that she had non-smoker's lung cancer. That cancer directly related to her duties as a firefighter for the city of Nashua. The last 11 and a half months, you've listened to these guys today. I can talk to you about the data. They're going to do a much better job than I can. But the preventive screening and stuff like that comes from a program like this is there shouldn't be even a doubt in your minds that this is the right thing to do. What firefighters are exposed to every day just doing their jobs, between building fires, hazardous material responses, and then you've already heard Senator Carson talk about the PFAS chemicals in our gear and everything else, the exposures that our firefighters are knowingly going into every single day. This is worth their lives. And if you need an example of it, even a friend of mine, Pete Lennon, is an example of how pre-screening can work, and can save lives. My wife went through every physical the fire department threw at her, but sometimes those physicals don't contain the necessary screenings because the departments don't pay for them or something like that. So having an additional program that covers those things, I think, is huge for our firefighters. When you talk about the health care aspects of this bill and the help that it can do, I mean, one blood test my wife went through was $9,000. $9,000 for just one blood test, let alone the number of CAT scans, PET scans, the chemotherapy, the radiation, and everything else that she had to go through as well. And unfortunately, because of the aggressive nature of her cancer that she got, not from smoking or anything else, but because of her duties as a firefighter, I lost her after 11 and a half months. So I hope, because I can't go on much longer, I hope that you guys and the legislature in general and the general court do the right thing and pass this bill. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, and we're very sorry for your loss.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Ryan Cashin and Chad Gamache. Do you want to come up together? Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. My name is Ryan Cashin, Chief of the Manchester Fire Department.
Chad Gamache, Vice President, Manchester Firefighters, Local 856.
Madam Chair, I want to thank you and the members for allowing me to testify today in favor of Senate Bill 352, which will provide cancer screenings for all active and retired firefighters. The Manchester Fire Department, in conjunction with Dartmouth Hitchcock, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the Manchester Professional Firefighters Association, developed a pilot program for early detection cancer screenings. The goal of this pilot program was to show proof of concept based on statistical data that showed that lung cancer and skin cancer are two of the most prevalent cancers amongst firefighters nationwide. It was determined that a dermatology screening, along with a lung CT, was the best course of action. This baseline screening will act as a foundation for all future screenings. We started with a full dermatology screening offered to every firefighter in the city of Manchester, totaling 204 members. Of that 204, 185 members agreed to be screened. That's over 90% of the fire department. Dartmouth Hitchcock mobilized a team of dermatologists, and we screened 184 firefighters in 5 days. Of the 184, 22 firefighters were scheduled for a follow-up with a Dartmouth Hitchcock dermatologist. The initial criteria for the lung CT screening was 40 years old with 10 years of firefighting service. 130 Manchester firefighters met this initial criteria, and we screened 125 of those, which is over 96%. Of the 125 members screened, we had 32 incidental findings from the screenings, and those members were encouraged to follow up with their PCP. An additional 16 members referred to pulmonary at Dartmouth Hitchcock for a follow-up appointment. Of the 16 referred, 14 fell into a category 3 and 2 fell into a category 4. That's a total of 48 members of the 125 that need some sort of follow-up care, which comes out to 38% of the members that were screened. We are currently working with Dartmouth to schedule all remaining members of the Manchester Fire Department for a lung CT. As stated earlier, the goal was to show proof of concept. And we live in a world filled with statistics and data today. The statistics that matters most is how many lives are saved. This pilot program has already saved one life. Due to the early detection cancer screening program, one Manchester firefighter was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer. Fire Marshal Pete Lennon's cancer was detected and diagnosed at an early stage. And with a successful operation at Dartmouth Hitchcock to remove his cancer completely, he was able to return to work cancer-free in less than 4 weeks. He's going to testify hereafter. The statistical data is empirical. Firefighters are going to be diagnosed with cancer. And it is a question of when, not if. With this as the only reasonable conclusion, it comes down to a question of cost. As the fire chief of the state's largest department, I entirely understand what it means to work within a budget. This program has a price, and I take that very seriously. However, I urge that we cannot look at this in a vacuum, and we need to perform a complete cost analysis. It will not just be the cost of screening versus the cost of cancer treatment. The analysis must also consider how long a firefighter will be out of work and the impact on firefighting operations. It also must consider the emotional and mental fatigue it puts on a department when these issues arise. All those factors need to be taken into account. Firefighters are going to do their jobs. They will risk their lives and perform aggressive interior firefighting operations. Knowing that they are not only risking their lives on the fire ground, but also putting their health at risk every day, they will still do their jobs. It is not what we do, it is who we are. My job as fire chief is simple. Make sure my members have the tools they need to do what they do. I'm here today to do that, to make sure that every firefighter in the state receives a baseline early detection cancer screening. We have shown it can be done, and the statistics show it must be done. I urge all of you to support Senate Bill 352, ensure we provide necessary tools for firefighters to do their jobs, which is to save lives and property. Thank you all. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the chief? See none. Representative, did you want to sign in?
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, and it looks like our last speaker now, just Dr. Mike Hamrock, are you here? You didn't sign up whether you wanted to speak or not. I'm presuming you do want to speak. Okay. Come on down. Welcome.
Thank you. Members of the committee, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Dr. Michael Hamrock. I'm a primary care and addiction medicine doc at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center in Boston, Mass. I'm also the medical director of our first responder early detection program at that hospital, where we've recently saved 13 firefighters from dying from early detection of these cancers. So I'm glad to be part of that program. In my role as a Boston firefighter and later on as the medical director for the Boston Fire Department, I really developed a unique perspective on firefighter health issues, and that's why I'm so passionate about this subject today. I developed screening guidelines for early detection of cancer and heart disease in firefighters that are used now locally and across the country. I'm also an active member of the Firefighter Cancer Support Network on the Health and Wellness Advisory Council. And I'm also a contributing author to the book called Surviving the Fire Service. I've been on, in the past 4 years, I've been Boston Magazine's top doctor list, and also I do run marathons with the Boston Fire Department Running Club. So it is with all these unique experiences and background that I'm really asking for your support for this bill to establish an early detection screening pilot program for active and retired New Hampshire firefighters. I lost too many good friends and colleagues from occupational cancer, and I believe needlessly. And I do believe many of those firefighters would be around today if we had the screening programs that we'll hopefully can implement in New Hampshire. I am convinced that early detection screening programs are very necessary to save the lives of firefighters in New Hampshire. Studies show there's a 4 times better survival rate fighting cancer at an early stage than a later stage. And I also think, what the loved ones of firefighters go through when they lose one of their family members from cancer is devastating and takes tremendous physical, emotional, and financial toll on the firefighters' families as well. We also know early detection screening tests will save the taxpayers in New Hampshire a tremendous amount of money because the cost of finding cancer early is more than 1/2 the cost of treating a cancer at its later stage. So everyone tremendously benefits from a program like this. We also know these early detection screening tests basically get firefighters to really take better care of themselves when they know if there's something found there. They're going to work much better to prevent it from getting worse. So everyone benefits from a program such as this. We talk a lot about the unique risk that firefighters have for cancer, but I think one way we can kind of remember it, hopefully, is if there was a fire in Concord today, and today is Wednesday, and if you were, say, watching a football game with the firefighters on Saturday, you could still smell traces of smoke coming from the firefighter's body. That's 3 days out from fighting that fire. And there's all these chemicals and toxins that the firefighters are exposed to on that fire today, still coming out of the system, but still being exposed through their pores. And we know on the fire ground, it's the inhalation of these chemicals, the ingestion and the absorption of these chemicals that make their way into the firefighter's bloodstream, travel to different organs, set up, and many years later cause cell damage, cell mutations, and cancer develops several years later. And that's a typical way firefighters are getting cancer. The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health did a study several years ago of 30,000 firefighters across this country at San Francisco, Chicago, and Philadelphia. And they found firefighters are 9% more likely to develop cancer than the people they serve, and 14% more likely to die from cancer than the people they serve. In my experience as a Boston firefighter and a medical director there, and someone who takes care of our firefighters, we have 20 firefighters in Boston get cancer every year. That's one case every 3 weeks. We have several recent deaths from cancer, and we have several firefighters now who probably won't make it through the year because of their advanced cancer. So it's a tremendous loss when we lose firefighters like this. So I think this early detection screening program would help save some of our firefighters as well. And even the cost to taxpayers. I'm a city of Boston resident. I live in the city. I pay taxes in the city, and we pay a tremendous amount of money for cancer and firefighters for the treatment purposes. Those 20 cases, we spend between $300,000 and $500,000 per year for every case. We pay for the chemotherapy, the immunotherapy is very expensive, is effective, but it's a lot of money, radiation treatment, surgery. And we have minimal staffing, so that firefighter who has cancer, another firefighter to fill in for him at time and a half. So we spend between $6 to $10 million every year on cancer in the fire service. Imagine we could spend even a very tiny percentage of that money on these screening tests like we're proposing today. It would save not the taxpayers a lot of money, but it would save a tremendous amount of lives. The World Health Organization has a committee called the International Agency for Research on Cancer. And recently they just declared that firefighting is a cancer-causing occupation. It's now considered what they call a Group 1, the highest rate risk carcinogen to humans. So right now, if a firefighter takes this job, they know right away from this research that there's a very good chance being a firefighter is going to give them cancer. And I really believe it's why these early detection programs are so important. Knowing full well that firefighters are very high risk of cancer, and these early detection screening tests are very effective, finding it early and treatable stage, and hopefully keep the firefighter working. So the other question is, what is the real mechanism of cancer in firefighters? We talked about the PFAS material that's in firefighters' gear. It's basically on all the linings of the gear, and we know now that exposure to ultraviolet light, heat, the normal wear and tear, those PFAS chemicals actually aerosolize, so the firefighters breathe them in, they ingest them, they absorb them, and it's giving them a lot of cancer. Particularly, we see this in younger firefighters with kidney and testicular cancer. So we know that's a risk. The other risk on a fire ground, every part of a household furniture is covered with flame retardants designed to prevent the fire from spreading. But we know now when those chemicals, they combust, they go off in the atmosphere, in the fire ground. The firefighters inhale these, ingest and absorb these chemicals. It gives them cancer several years later. Even hanging around the firehouse, the diesel exhaust in the firehouse is cancer causing as well. In my experiences in Boston, we had one firehouse in the North End, Engine 8, on Hanover Street, the really big part of the community down there. We had 3 firefighters in 1 year develop kidney cancer. And the reason we think happened there is the kitchen is right off in the first floor where the fire apparatus comes in and out of there and blows the diesel exhaust right into the kitchen where the firefighters have their meals. And we believe it's put them at risk. Since then, we have climber vents that take care of the diesel exhaust. We have the door swinging back and forth, but it just shows you, just hanging around the firehouse can put you at risk for developing cancer. The other thing with PFAS, we know that it actually causes fertility issues in females as well. There's 8% of firefighters in New Hampshire now are female firefighters, and they have their own unique types of cancer, particularly thyroid cancer and melanoma are more prevalent in female firefighters as well. But these chemicals also put female firefighters at risk of fertility issues. They have tests on looking at ovarian life, and female firefighters, studies now show that they're less likely to be fertile after years of exposure to chemicals. To me, it's an awful thing to find. And also new studies show it can potentially cause birth defects and the offspring of the female firefighters. So another thing why we need these early detection tests as well. Other known risk factors we know that cause cancer in firefighters to overnight shifts. Working overnight shifts disrupt your circadian rhythm, lessen your immune response, and put you at risk for cancers. And also cumulative stresses from the job, seeing traumatic events, people suffering and dying also put you at risk for cancer. So I believe it's because of all these exposures that place firefighters at very high risk for cancers, and why these early detection screenings are imperative for firefighters. To pick up these cancers at early stage 1 and 2, where they're most likely to be treatable and survivable, versus the later stages where more likely to be fatal. We know early detection of cancer saves lives. If you know that in smokers about 10 years ago, there's new treatment protocols. They're called lung scans for smokers to find cancers at early stage. And it's the only thing that had a dramatic change in cancer in smokers in this country. 20% reduction in mortality now in lung cancer because smokers get these lung scans at an early age, find these nodules early, the lung cancer early in a treatable stage. So it's pretty remarkable. And is a disease that kills more Americans from cancer than any other one. 140,000 people in this country die from lung cancer. So to drop that rate 20% is pretty remarkable. And this is what we're trying to do with the fire service with these early detection screening tests. Particularly the cancers that are killing firefighters, the lung cancers, the gastrointestinal cancers, esophageal colon cancer, the genital urinary cancers, the bladder, the prostate, the kidney, the testicle cancers, and also the skin and blood cancers. You might have heard about this new multi-cancer early detection test from Gallery. It's designed to basically find 50 different types of cancer with one single blood test. The way this test works is all our DNA in the body gets shed into the bloodstream at certain points. And we now know with this very highly specific test, the cancer cells that shed the DNA have a special methyl group on it. It looks a little different than the regular cells that shed DNA. And now these can be detected with this high-tech technology in the bloodstream and actually find the cancer and determine where it came from. So it's pretty remarkable. These tests just came out a few years ago. So I think for high-risk folks like firefighters should be offered these tests. Our traditional screening tests for cancer will be colonoscopies, PSAs. We find about 30% of cancers. So we're missing 70% of cancers with what we currently have. And I think these tests will certainly help find more of those 70% that we are missing, and particularly for our firefighter population. Those CAT scans of the lungs that I mentioned about the smokers, we've done them in Boston for our firefighters, and we found 30% of our firefighters had lung nodules, which potentially are precancerous. And all those firefighters now are getting close follow-up with their primary doc and lung specialists. If they grow to a certain size, we'll have to go after them with a biopsy but they're going to be followed very closely. So thankfully, they know what they have, and they're going to be watched very closely before it becomes cancerous. We've had some firefighters, we found actually tumorous nodules on them with the screening test. Had the tumors resected and are back to work now, so they certainly have saved lives. The other thing we find with our lung scans, it looks at the lung, but it goes from the lower part of the neck to the upper part of the abdomen. We're finding a lot of thyroid nodules and liver lesions and even early esophageal cancer on our firefighters with these screening tests. So they're more effective than just looking at the lungs. And you've heard from the Manchester fire chief give his emotional testimony about what he found in his members. I mean, 38% of firefighters had these screening tests. 38% of them had really concerning findings, which is an awful lot than you would see in the general public. So again, thank you for hearing my testimony today. I lost too many of my close friends, firefighter friends, from occupational cancer, and a lot of them would still be here today if we had screening tests like this. And, all my unique experiences of firefighter and medical director of the fire department, I really gain a better perspective on firefighter health issues. And I am convinced these screenings work, and they will save firefighter lives. They will save the taxpayers in New Hampshire money, and they will allow firefighters to be more fit on the fire scene. So I am asking for your support of this bill. And our real goal, should be lessen the disability of firefighters for cancer. And that's what these screening tests are going to be doing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. Any questions from the committee? I only have one.
Yes.
Since you're from Boston, does Massachusetts have a pilot program or this program?
So Massachusetts has a pretty good presumptive bill. With the Mass Fire Academy now, we've started lung scans that we mentioned in this bill, as well as the skin cancer screening program. And we're working on the thyroid ultrasounds, and we're getting some, Mass Fire Academy is getting grants from the state legislature for that.
Great, thank you. Senator, did you want to speak? Senator Susie? Okay. Representative Pearson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the committee for hearing testimony today on this issue. I am Representative Steve Pearson, Rockingham District 13, which encompasses the town of Derry. My district, the Derry Fire Department, is a full-time fire department that runs 4 firehouses and 4 battalions. But I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about my personal experience, because I am one of the people that Chief Cashin mentioned that was targeted for finding something in their screening. And I apologize for my tardiness, as I was on duty last night. Last night I put on my cancer suit in the course of my duties. And it's unfortunate that in the vernacular we have now somewhat referred to those as our cancer suits, as we are now acutely aware of the composition, makeup, and circumstances that expose us to the various things within them. I've been in this business for 27 years, 23 of them in the state of New Hampshire. When you grow up, you never really, everybody wants to be something when they grow up, right? And for most of the fire service, we figured that out early and just couldn't vary off of it, right? So it's very much a fabric of our being. But when we grow up, we don't think about, hey, I want to be a firefighter, and at 60, I want to die of cancer. That part doesn't really come into play. So 27 years ago, that was not even on the forethought of my mind. But today it's on the forethought all the time. So especially now, especially when I'm making follow-up appointments at Dartmouth. So I have concerns about some of the historical context here. You know, this has been a male-dominated profession for a long time. We have virtually no data on how this affects women. I have concerns about what happens simply after when I sleep with my wife. What is she now being exposed to? Because 2 days later, when I get out of the shower, you can still smell the smoke in my hair, despite every effort. So I think this is something that needs serious attention. I think the cost benefit analysis is without question, certainly. And just what is not calculable, I suppose, is the emotional and the psychological impact that occurs for the folks in my profession now, that every day we're learning more and more about what's going on, and it's really not getting good. So I just wanted to put a little personal face from the House side as to the effect of this and how this is actually the real deal, and this is not just some sort of a theory or some idea that's coming out of a foreign land, or which I mean by Massachusetts. So I just ask that that due consideration be given here to this. And that list that was read, I listened to this in the car coming up. Jeff Bokum, in fact, was a working partner of mine. Actually on 9/11, we worked together on 9/11 in a firehouse in New Hampshire, and his death was unfortunate. That was the first person I ever knew personally to die of firefighter cancer, and unfortunately, it's just going to be the beginning of the list. So I thank you for your time today on this, and if you have any questions, I'm all ears.
Any questions for the committee? Seeing none. Thank you,
Thank
Representative.
you, Madam Chair.
I do. Mark McKenzie?
I want to be respectful of your time, as I know it's a little different in this side of the building than it is in the House. But let me just say this. I'm here to support the legislation. I was one of the professional firefighters leadership that passed the cancer legislation many years ago that was then overturned by the courts as a mandate. But more importantly, for me, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which meant I was about 10 years out from the fire service, from retiring from the fire service. That has not been a pleasant experience the past number of years of my life. It involved a stem cell transplant at one point, which meant you were in the hospital 3 weeks in isolation, going through a stem cell transplant, and that's a whole thing in and of itself. And the kind of cancer that I have, non-Hodgkin's, does not go away. And I come from a time in the fire service where there were, 50 years ago is when I got on, there were no air packs that were of any use. They probably would kill you if you used them. So we humped around and smelled and sniffed and filled our lungs with everything you could possibly imagine for the first probably 15 years of my career. And no doubt, I have no doubt, and you've heard stuff from the people here, that had an impact on my life, but more importantly, it had an impact on my family. And even as time went on, when you deal with cancer, it impacts everybody around you. Now, I understand the risks that I took when I got on the fire department. I assumed those risks. I don't blame the fire department, and I would never have done anything different than be a firefighter. That's all I ever wanted to be. But maybe we can, through the screening process, get it early, because mine was not found early. By the time they found mine, I'd already lost my right kidney, and I was a day after they diagnosed it, I was in chemotherapy. So maybe this can help. Get out ahead of this early, detect it early, treat it early, and maybe increase the survivability of the firefighters in this business. That should not be what the assumption that we make, that we're going to get cancer and suffer for the remainder of our life, or be under the cloud of cancer for the rest of your life. So I'd be happy to come back anytime to relay my experience in more detail. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for your attention to this legislation.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Last speaker, Peter Lennon.
Apologize for that. I'm also the Secretary Treasurer of Local 3820. As you can imagine, I'm here today to express my support.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat your name?
Peter Lennon, Lennon. I'm here today to express my support for SB 352. In preparation for today's hearing, I spent a considerable amount of time thinking about how to best explain why this legislation is so important. Thought after thought, I was going through my mind, and I've gone through these thoughts over and over again, trying to decide just how to convey them to you. I decided the best to share my story. I've been a career firefighter in New Hampshire for over 25 years, but most importantly, I'm a proud father of 4 beautiful girls, Chase, Harper, Honor, and Shalise. These girls are my everything. I'm so lucky to have them in my life. I enjoy the opportunity every day to watch them grow into strong, independent women. I am also incredibly fortunate to have my beautiful wife, Colleen, in my life. There's nobody else that I would like to be on this journey with. And truly don't know how I would have gotten this far in life without my father, Paul. In August of 2022, I went to the doctor for a routine physical. At the end of the appointment, as I was getting ready to leave, I mentioned several minor symptoms that I had been experiencing, mostly fatigue and some restless leg syndrome. We talked, and I decided jointly with my doctor that exercise and vitamins might be the best course of action for this. I would try to do more exercise and vitamins, and that continued for a few months. The symptoms stayed pretty much the same, and nothing really changed. In April of 2023, while on vacation, my fatigue seemed to get worse, and other symptoms began to develop. I talked myself into it just being life over age 45, working a lot and stress of my job. It was about that time that I received an email from the Manchester Fire Department that we would begin a new cancer screening program. I talked with members of the Fire Marshal Division, and we all jointly decided that we would all participate in this. I really didn't put much thought into it until paperwork came for us to fill out and begin scheduling our CAT scans. I was scheduled in August. I remember us all joking in the hallway while we were waiting our turn. Later the next day, our results arrived. It was recommended that I schedule a follow-up with my doctor. I again went to see my doctor, still not thinking anything major was wrong. At that appointment, I was immediately sent for blood work and a colonoscopy. The results of the blood work showed that almost every value in my blood was off. My colonoscopy revealed that I had a tumor about the size of a golf ball in my colon and 2 other large polyps. The doctor estimated that I would have about 4 years before the cancer would have spread and taken my life. He confirmed the diagnosis of the colon cancer and referred me to Dartmouth-Hitchcock for treatment. I was assured that I would get the best possible care available in the state of New Hampshire. This was on September 11th, a date that in itself brings strong emotion for those in the fire service. The next month was probably the most difficult of my life. The unknowns, the what ifs, were something that I didn't know how to explain. My wife and I decided not to share the details with the girls, instead just tell them that Dad was going to have a minor procedure done at the hospital. The hardest thing I had to do was tell my father. My father is the strongest person I know. My family lost my sister to the opioid crisis 3 years ago, and I will never forget how devastated he was, and he told me that parents should never have to bury their children. Now he potentially would have to bury me. Dad also assured me that I was stronger than the cancer and I can beat it. On September 20th of 2023, I had surgery at the Elliott Hospital. The doctor from Dartmouth successfully removed my appendix, 25 lymph nodes, a foot of my colon, and most importantly, the cancerous tumor. He explained to me that everything in the area was checked and rechecked, and he believes that he had gotten it all. I currently have 6 different scars on my abdomen, which I am happy to have. I was supposed to be in the hospital for at least a week, but I was able to go home in 2 days. I remember walking into the house through my garage and crying tears of joy because I was not sure that I would ever come back here. Over the following 6 weeks, with the help of family and friends and coworkers, I recovered and returned to full duty. If the city of Manchester had not taken on this cancer screening initiative, I most likely would not have been alive longer than 4 years. Again, if my cancer hadn't been detected and removed when it was, as I sit here today, I would have already been down to 3.5 years. I am grateful for the efforts of Chief Cashin, the City of Manchester, and IAFF Local 856 work for this program to make it a reality. I'm also grateful for Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center and the Elliott Hospital for the care and treatment that I have received. I feel that having cancer screenings for New Hampshire firefighters will save lives for both active and retired members of fire departments throughout the state. I promise you that there are others out there that have the same story similar to mine. I'm truly proof that this program works and needs to be law in the state of New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank Dartmouth that you got screened and taken care of. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Is there anyone here that would like to speak that hasn't been given the opportunity? We currently have 17 individuals. All right. Jenny O'Higgins. Oh, for the next, oh, sorry, next bill. We have 17 people who have signed in support, not willing to speak, and those that spoke. So with that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 352.
We go into exec session.
Second. That was going to be my motion. Thank you very much, Senator Bradley.
All those willing to go into exec session, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll move, ought to pass and ought to pass on amendment 002. Second.
All right. What?
Go ahead. Second?
No, Kevin already seconded. No, you want to speak.
Oh, I do want to speak.
Okay.
Oh, but are we all squared away on the amendment?
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Right, so speaking to the general bill, I think those of you that know me, or maybe you don't know, you know me, but you might not know that my husband was retired. He's a retired member of the fire service. He served for 30 years, and I know the smell of smoke and sometimes chemicals all too well coming back into my house. And although I was proud of the work that he did every day, this in the last, like really 10 to 20 years had become a worry of ours. As we sit here today, there was a list that was read of those, and many, sadly, many of which I knew that had already passed away, and then recently of cancer, and others that I know are currently battling it that are members of the fire service, not just in New Hampshire, but I live close to Vermont, and so know some folks right over the border. I think one of the things that is striking here, and I'm only going to say two more things, is when we think of the fire service and we think of what takes their lives, we often think about the structural work that they do in actually fighting the fires. But we heard today what is killing the members of our fire service is cancer. 70, I think it was greater than 75% at the firefighters memorial are attributed to cancer deaths. This is, and when you think about it, the gear that they wear is a primary cause of this, but we have no other tool to fight back. So what we do have right now is to be proactive and to screen. And I know that, thinking about like mammograms and colonoscopies that we regularly get, we think about like differently, not occupationally, but it's because it's been proven that that's ways to early detect and to save our lives and the members of our families. So I want to join in, obviously support this. And I think that, I believe it was the words of President Real, it's time for us to take care of those that take care of us. And I appreciate all your work. Thank you.
All right, the motion is ought to pass as move ought to pass as amended.
So I met yesterday with Mr. Reel. Obviously, $5 million is $5 million, but when you look at the surplus we've generated, this should go to the top of the list. And the fact that we're going to vote ought to pass on it right now, I think sends a strong message. It should be the top of the list of monies that we appropriate. So I think, thank you for the meeting yesterday, and I appreciate that. And I think I see Senator Susie nodding her head. I'm sure you're going to get a 24-0 vote out of the Senate.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to everyone who was here today. It was really important for us to hear all these personal stories, and so I just wanted to, I know you were also busy, and thank you for sharing those stories. Not only do our firefighters keep our community safe, but they're also an integral part of our community. They build community in addition to saving lives. Personally, I have a number of stories where my son, who's now 10, they're heroes to him. And one particular, they had come to a call, the entire force had come to a call in my neighborhood. They were done with the call, they were leaving, they saw my son walking down the street, they all stopped, they all got out, and they all had a conversation with a 5-year-old. That's how they build community, in addition to saving our lives. So I'm looking forward to voting for this bill today. Thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Oh, you did. All those in favor ought to pass as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we want to speak of it on the floor, or do we want it to go on?
I would recommend, Madam Chair, that you take it out so you can speak on it on the floor.
Sure.
And I'm sure that Senator Prentice, who's a co-sponsor, will want to do the same, as will Senator Susie.
And
and-
Senator Carson, whose bill it is.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I will take it out. And do I hear a motion to move out of
So
exec?
moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
What's your copy?
Oh, Duncan, no.
Not really, it's.
It's just-
Want water or something?
Later than I.
We'll be playing at the Seashell in August. Mm-hmm. February 2nd in Manchester. You're not doing anything. We're marking down in Harris at Exos. He's a famous singing senator.
You know,
Oh.
Tim wanted to know, because I guess he's after me, I have to go over to Ways and Means, to chair. So if you could
I'll
just
text
text him, yeah, just send him a text, he would appreciate that. Thank you very much on that last bill.
all right. I'm missing a few senators, but,
I know you're behind, you probably want to.
so I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 495. That's a good highway. So, welcome. Yeah, true.
Good
course they-
morning again, Madam Chair. And for the record, my name is Sharon Carson, and I have the pleasure of representing Senate District 14, comprising the towns of Londonderry, Hudson, and Auburn. And I have for your consideration this morning Senate Bill 495, relative to certification of alcohol and other drug use treatment facilities. Madam Chair, I do have some bullet points that I'd just like to go through. New Hampshire substance use treatment system has grown exponentially over the last decade. And thanks to the hard work of many thousands of individuals who now receive treatment services each day, from dozens of providers around our state. We want to believe that all of our treatment providers offer the highest quality treatment available, and many do, but the fact is we really don't know for sure. Individual practitioners are licensed, as are residential treatment facilities, but the fact is the vast majority of outpatient treatment organizations do not register with the state in any way. Because of this lack of oversight, we don't know who these treatment organizations are and where they operate, and we certainly can't be sure that they all adhere to the best practice and follow evidence-based practice. At a minimum, this leads to a wide range in the quality of treatment services available to individuals in need. At worst, it can leave the door open to abuse and misconduct by some of our lesser treatment providers, which can weaken our entire system and aggravate the challenges facing some of our most vulnerable friends and neighbors. Senate Bill 495 looks to address this lack of oversight and strengthen patient protection in two ways. First, it would task the Department of Health and Human Services to develop a certification system for all of our treatment providers so that the state has a more comprehensive record of which organizations are providing treatment in our state and has a tool to ensure that they are sticking to best practice and providing patients the services they need. Secondly, it strengthens the lines of reporting misconduct by establishing a new Office of Behavioral Health Ombudsman dedicated specifically to receiving, investigating, and addressing allegations of wrongdoing. Certainly, the current Ombudsman office within DHHS does all it can to address allegation, but still a culture of silence exists within the substance use treatment world. Staff within this office would be specially trained and prepared to address the unique challenges facing individuals impacted by substance use disorder and mental illness. Together, these two provisions would go far to lift up our substance use treatment network and assure that individuals and families in need have access to the highest quality services. It will help them in their quest to achieve recovery from substance use disorder, and it will go far to help our state overcome the ongoing addiction crisis. Madam Chair, I'm going to conclude my testimony at this point, and I would like to thank you and the committee for your consideration of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Jenny O'Higgins?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for hearing my testimony today. My name is Jenny O'Higgins. I'm a legislative liaison for behavioral health and senior policy analyst for the Department of Health and Human Services. I am also a member of a firefighter family, so I was emotionally wrecked getting started on this bill, so I'll just put that out there. Well, I would like to be able to offer some input today and provide some information relative to SB 495. The department continues to work to expand access to high quality care and to monitor the effectiveness of this care to ensure that residents of New Hampshire receive safe, effective, and ethical substance use treatment. And the existing state regulations through the Office of Professional Licensure and the department's bureaus of licensing and certification, drug and alcohol services, and the Office of the Ombudsman, they do help to protect individuals seeking treatment by setting standards for the quality of care and monitoring adherence to evidence-based practices. And that oversight does aim to promote public health, prevent malpractice, and ensure safe and adequate standards of care, and really also to maintain the integrity of substance use treatment in our field. The department shares the goals of this legislation for increased oversight over outpatient substance use treatment services. And we know that people seeking services for substance use disorder and those in early recovery are vulnerable, and that exploitation can intensify their vulnerability, hindering their recovery and leading to really harmful consequences. For all of those reasons, the department is deeply committed to working closely with advocates and sponsors of this legislation to ensure that it will be effective.
I have some written testimony I'll provide for you today that identifies some areas of review for this particular bill that includes some technical challenges and fiscal impacts that will need to be addressed in an amendment to enable the legislation's effectiveness. I'll highlight those very briefly for you and then leave them with you. So currently, the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services has some regulatory authority over outpatient services. However, there is a definition under RSA 172 that limits that authority to those providers that are funded by that specific bureau. Right, so we need to change that definition in order to make sure that we would have the ability to oversee or certify across the board. The proposed legislation also includes residential treatment, which is currently regulated under the department's Bureau of Licensing and Certification administrative rules. So we may need some tweaks to the existing legislation there to make sure we don't have duplicative oversight, but make sure that we have really high quality oversight. There's also an amendment within the bill in 172 that would require the department to post all investigatory reports, but they are considered exempt under 91A. However, we could post findings alone. So those are some clarifying pieces. And then in section 4 of the legislation, it pertains to the creation of the behavioral health ombudsman. Once the certification program is established within the department, the certified agencies would all fall under the purview of the existing department-wide ombudsman. So they would be able to take complaints and handle follow-up, but we do see a need for additional training within that specific expertise in behavioral health within the office, and would like to work out how exactly to do that as well. The department also suggests adding language to the bill that requires that the rules include education to clients and facilities posting information around how to report complaints to the ombudsman. We do believe that there's folks that don't necessarily know how to come forward with that information and want to continue that education and make sure that people really understand how to do so. So again, the department is looking forward to working really closely with our advocates and our sponsors of this bill to make sure that it will have an effective way for us to really understand the landscape of services that are out there in New Hampshire, to ensure the quality of those services and to respond to concerns. So thank you so much for the opportunity to provide this testimony today, and happy to take questions.
Any questions from the committee? See none. Jenny, could you, I know you said you would, but could you connect with Senator Carson and the advocates and go over some of the changes that you would present?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Lennon. Welcome.
Okay. All right. I'm a little bit of an emotional wreck, I have to say, about this hearing this morning. My uncle just passed away as a firefighter, was a fire chief in Acushnet, Mass for many, many years, and originally was diagnosed with kidney cancer and just died like last month. So yeah, so it kind of changed my whole view of coming in this morning, but trying to take a breath here. My name is Michelle Lennon. I'm the pastor of the Northfield Tilton Congregational Church in Tilton, New Hampshire. I'm also the president and CEO of Archways Community Resource Centers. And those resource centers are located in the church, seeing so many families affected by substance use disorders and having no place to go for help. My own experience in one of the emergency rooms, after my husband, he had his 16th surgery in October of this year. But it's been a long road with opioid addiction that was kind of, formed with overprescription of OxyContin back in 2009 when he was learning to walk again, basically. Ongoing issues, every time he has a surgery and opiates are provided, had to go to treatment, numerous times. But also had, protective factors in the background of me being educated in this work, because my background was as a home visitor prior to founding the centers. I'm here because we need oversight. We need help with it. One of the challenges of this population, and having lived it personally as well as professionally, is, honesty comes with recovery, but it's not always there, which makes individuals that are in treatment very susceptible to predators. Twice now we have had to go to treatment providers regarding staff forming relationships that were inappropriate with people that we were referring for treatment. And I know for the people that have come to us about it, later on, we have heard from others that have said the same thing has happened. That's one area that causes us sometimes concern because of the lack of oversight. Another concern is the lack of professional training provided to individuals. I train Peer Recovery Support Service, the Art and Science of Peer Assisted Recovery, the Recovery Coach Academy for CCAR, also for the Opioid Response Network, supporting peer recovery support services for pregnant and parenting families, recovery coaching and harm reduction pathway. Like, I see a lot of people, and it is not uncommon to have people with less than 3 months of recovery coming from one of the for-profit organizations in our state that are providing oversight to housing in these PHP programs. That is also a huge concern of ours. We have provided peer recovery support services to house managers that were, I would say, taken advantage of because of their need for housing that continues after being in these programs, where they have had reoccurrence of symptoms largely due to the stress of doing these jobs that, you know, they really shouldn't be doing yet. So just many concerns, and the lack of oversight is super concerning. We work really well with some of our community partners that are for-profit centers, you know, that have come in and provided services. But there are times when we are crossing our fingers that things go well, when we are referring people to treatment, because we just don't know about the quality of care that they are going to get. When we talk about evidence-based programs, that's what we want to see, because we don't want the revolving door for our participants. But when circumstances are created where the care is not good, there isn't a lot we can do, because it's always up to insurance and availability, you know, and then we're hoping for the best a lot of times. Having a loved one in recovery, I always want the best services for him. You know, when we access services, and sometimes it has been wonderful. There have been treatment providers, I can say that are now professors at like NHTI and stuff that he is still in touch with, you know, at different times, learning more and more about how he can help others who have been through what he has been through. But then there are other times when we just know that it has been predatory. And the revolving door, I can remember Senator Guy to talk.
Quality evidence-based services across our system to help meet the needs of individuals seeking recovery. But the fact is that there are gaps, there are holes, and there are weaknesses in our regulatory system. Currently, of the more than 60 provider organizations that are believed to be operating in our state, and I say believe because we don't know for sure because we don't document it, the state health department contracts with only 11 of them. As Jenny mentioned, the state does license residential treatment facilities, but that primarily covers physical space and does not sufficiently address clinical care or protect the health and safety of patients. For the remaining dozens of treatment providers, once again, we don't know where they operate. We don't know who they're treating. We don't know who they are, and we certainly can't ensure that they're providing high quality evidence-based services. At a minimum, this leaves individuals seeking treatment to navigate an uneven system that varies significantly in the quality of the services offered. This weakens our treatment network as a whole and contributes to the revolving door that Michelle was talking about of patients cycling in and out of treatment, costing these individuals, our providers, and the state as a whole valuable time, money, and other resources. At worst, it leaves patients at risk of abuse and misconduct, like that revealed last year in New Hampshire Public Radio's podcast series, The 13th Step. As I'm sure you heard, the 13th Step details a devastating pattern of sexual assault and abuses within one of New Hampshire's largest SED programs. And it exposes that because of this lack of oversight, state regulators had few tools to address these allegations when they emerged. You've heard how this bill would address this. It would create a mandatory certification for all substance use treatment providers in our state, and it would strengthen lines of reporting by creating this new office of the ombudsman to receive, address, investigate complaints of misconduct. Together, we think that this would really help to change the culture within our SED system, to ensure high quality services and to ensure that there are supports and resources available to people when they're ready to speak out about abuses. By lifting, this is a rising tide lifts all boats situation. By really reinforcing and strengthening our substance use treatment system, we'll be helping all of our providers to provide treatment to all those who need it and help us to finally overcome this addiction crisis that has stolen the lives of so many of our friends and neighbors. So with that, I ask you to support this bill. I know that the department did have some suggestions or areas of improvement. We are glad and happy to work with them, and we'll do so to make sure that this we structure this in a way that works for everyone. In the meantime, we thank you for your support, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jake. Senator Prentice?
Thank you. One quick question, Jake. You gave a number of, say, centers or facilities that you believe are out there, and then a number that are actually functioning, say, in an official capacity.
Yeah.
And we're looking to get a handle on this overall, like maybe the larger number. What was that again?
So I said 60 something. I really want to asterisk that is estimated. We
Okay.
we don't
We just don't know.
We just don't know. We
Okay.
don't know who they are. We don't know where they operate. That's part of what we're trying to accomplish here is make sure that the state has record of who is operating here, can hold them all to high standards, and ultimately has a tool to sort of redirect those who are not meeting our standards.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Last speaker is Amanda Vachon. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is the first time I've done this, so bear with me. My name is Amanda Vachon. I'm the coordinator for the Merrimack County Drug Court Program. I work for Riverbend Community Mental Health Center, one of the several agencies that collaborate every week to support individuals as they navigate the criminal justice system and the task of getting into sustained recovery from substance use disorder. Drug Court is a nationally recognized effort by the justice system to respond to criminal behavior by combining accountability with trauma-informed treatment. We know that individuals with substance use disorder do not stop committing crimes simply because they serve a jail or prison sentence, because while accountability for criminal behavior is a priority, incarceration does not address the elements that lead a person to commit many of the crimes we see in our population. The drug court mandates a participant to engage in long-term substance use treatment, random and frequent drug testing, community supervision, individual counseling, and more. We know that trauma often plays a role in the development of substance use disorder, and our programs work with participants to understand the root cause of their behavior and to address the areas of their life that contribute to relapse and recidivism. Sometimes over the course of a participant's time in drug court, their substance use disorder becomes unmanageable, and we find them clinically appropriate to enter inpatient treatment. SB 495 ensures that when we mandate a DC participant to a treatment center, we can assure that we are sending them to a facility that operates in an ethical manner and at a minimum standard of care. Currently, we run the risk of mandating participants to facilities with little to no oversight. This creates an environment for vulnerable people to be further victimized, creating an additional trauma that could decrease their likelihood of long-term success. The current landscape in New Hampshire inpatient treatment centers is such that should a patient be victimized by staff or other patients, there's no reporting mechanism to address the allegations. While a criminal investigation is always an option, it is the perpetuation of unethical actions that is a major concern to those of us working in the addiction field. We need to ensure that when an allegation of abuse is made, that there's a way to report it and then track the outcome of that report. Our drug court participants, and I want to mention that there are drug courts across the state of New Hampshire, so that this is not just particular to Merrimack County. We are challenging them to explore the worst things they've ever done, the worst things that have ever happened to them, and to find a way forward to a life that leaves criminal behavior behind. We cannot, in good conscience, mandate that same participant to treatment without advocating for a standard of care that any other citizen would be afforded when seeking treatment for a medical condition. In fact, I would argue that we have a responsibility to ensure the safety and well-being of our participants. I have worked in the drug court field for more than a decade. I worked majority of my career in Stratford County. And when I listened to the 13-Step podcast, I was left sick to my stomach because I have sent, as a part of a multidisciplinary team, hundreds of people to inpatient centers. And I know that statistically speaking, there were people that came across my desk that went to those treatment centers over the course of their time in drug court and were likely victimized by somebody in that treatment center. And it gave me pause, and it affected my sleep for a few days to think that I was involved in decisions that potentially created further trauma for the people that we were trying to serve. And if the purpose of specialty courts and drug court in particular is to get at the cause of criminal behavior and to stop it, if we are sending people to inpatient centers with no oversight, that could potentially lead to further victimhood. We're not going to be doing what we're set out to do. And so this bill is very, very important for that reason. We need to keep people safe if the goal is to keep people from going back into our prison system. I want to thank you for allowing me to advocate on behalf of our drug court. The best thing that we experience is the moment when someone realizes their full potential and takes control over their life and their future. I hope that you'll vote in favor of the legislation so that we can continue to treat our participants at the level of care that is most appropriate and gives them the best opportunity to reduce the chance they will reoffend. When we do that as a program, we create safer communities and families in New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on Senate Bill 495 that was not given? Sure.
Jenny O'Higgins from DHHS again. I just wanted to offer a point of clarification on two issues. One, just to your question around the estimates of organizations throughout the state. So the estimate that Jake was referring to was that there are 65 outpatient organizations that are enrolled with Medicaid. Not all providers are enrolled with Medicaid. They have 106 separate sites as well within for those 65 organizations. So that gives us some estimate of when we do certification, how large of a program will this be and what will that take to be able to implement well, right? And then the other point of clarification I just wanted to make is that the current residential treatment that is licensed has clinical standards under the 826 administrative rules. So just to make sure that it's not, that we're not thinking that that simply is the facility. There are clinical standards for licensed facilities. The department also investigates complaints that are submitted to the department for those licensed facilities, and they're also covered by the existing department-wide ombudsman. So the focus of certification is outpatient treatment that does not fall under licensing. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question from Senator Bradley.
Since you came back,
Oh.
there's no,
Whoops.
there's no fiscal note for the
Right.
office and the ombudsman. Is that something coming soon? I mean, I would anticipate the
What-
need for an appropriation.
What we will need for an appropriation as we work out the details of an amendment, we'll work through the exact amounts. But what we have for the fiscal note that we did submit is 4 positions, 3 for licensing with a supervisor, and then a training budget for the existing department-wide ombudsman's office to have some expertise in behavioral health, as opposed to another position.
All right. So
And we can
we'll
continue to work through the details of that and if that makes the most sense to everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Again, is there anyone here that would like to speak on Senate Bill 495 that was not given the opportunity? With that, I will close the hearing on 495, and as soon as our clerk is ready, we will open the next hearing.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Which one's this for? You all set? All right, I will open the hearing on Senate Bill 405 and welcome the prime sponsor, Senator Lang. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, fellow senators, for taking my testimony. Senator Tim Lang from District 2, representing the Lakes region. I present for you a bill requested by one of my constituents, and I'm also the vice chair of JALCAR. So what this rule looks to do is strike the generic rulemaking under a specific statute under DHHS. The intention, I think, of the legislature is that rulemaking should be done when we change a law, when it comes up to its 10-year annual, or if there's a significant change that creates an emergency or a fiduciary responsibility. Those are the rules as outlined in 541A, that an agency can submit an emergency rule if it's a health or safety related issue, or if it's a fiduciary responsibility problem. They can also, every 10 years, the agency can rewrite the law. They actually have to write the law by JALCA, by 541A rules. But what's happening is occasionally agencies are just opening rulemaking because we've left blanket rulemaking authority in statute, and allows them to say that the agency can write rules pursuant to 541A. And we leave that generic open-ended rulemaking authority for them, which allows them to change the rule 3 times in 10 years if they want to, with no change in the law on our side. And so in this particular area, there was a rulemaking that happened when there was no change in law. And a constituent ended up in the bad end of the state changing the rule. And so they brought this to my attention. I think that it should be the job of the legislature to, when it makes a law, to give them a window to create the rules around the law. And then once those rules are established, the citizens should have comfort knowing that that's the rule. And it's not going to continually change at the whim of a bureaucrat who decides they're going to open rulemaking and make a rule change again. So this just seeks to repeal that. I anticipate that I might be looking for more of these in statute, but this is the first one that was brought to my attention, and it happened to be in DHHS.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none.
Great.
Thank
I
you.
got to run back to Ways and Means. Thank you, guys.
Have fun. Melissa Hardy and Wendy Boltman. Welcome.
Good morning, Melissa Hardy. I'm the Division Director for Long-Term Supports and Services at DHHS.
And good morning. My name is Wendy Altman, and I am the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services at DHHS. Thank you, Chairman and Committee. We'd like to provide testimony in opposition of this bill. The proposed legislation does not contain any regulatory provisions to replace the regulations that would be repealed as a result of the proposed legislation. Without these regulations in place, the department could not guarantee that the CFI program, the Choices for Independence waiver program, would meet federal requirements such as the services being provided pursuant to written plans of care, or that necessary safeguards have been taken to protect the health and welfare of individuals receiving the CFI services. Without these regulations in place, the CFI waiver would likely not get Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services approval to continue operating. The CFI waiver mentions our HEE 801 and 805 rules numerous times to assure CMS of the department's ability to ensure proper oversight of service providers. If the proposed legislation were enacted, the department would need to repeal HEE 805 and most of HEE 801 and amend its waiver to notify CMS. CMS would be unlikely to approve a waiver without oversight of providers. Federal funding for the CFI program could cease, and if the proposed legislation were enacted, the state would lose federal funding of approximately $46,326,000 for state fiscal year 25 and $50,042,000 for state fiscal year 26. In addition to that, the state would lose an indeterminable amount of federal funding in the subsequent fiscal years, but we estimate that the loss of federal funding would be approximately $55 million to $60 million for state fiscal year 27, and between $60 and $65 million in state fiscal year 28. The CFI program would need additional state funding in the amount of lost federal revenue to continue operating. We also have our legal counsel, Brian Clark, who we'd like to invite to speak on behalf of our rulemaking process and further impact.
Senator, right?
Senator Bradley might have his hand up.
Senator Bradley?
I'm assuming you have written testimony.
We will be able to provide our
Your
testimony in writing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bredzel. So good morning, and thank you both for joining us. You talked about, so first of all, I'll go to the sponsor's comments or introduction. If I'm catching this correctly, sought to, bring rulemaking in general, well, in this particular area, only to certain points in time when laws were changed. So you say when a law was changed and there was rulemaking authority written into that, and changes could be taken care of there, not this section that is considered open-ended. Did I hear that correctly?
I think that
Yeah,
is
that's
what he's. I think that is what he said.
Okay.
Um,
I'm just trying to, so I'll stand by. So I want to connect over. Maybe I missed this in the earlier part of your testimony, and seeing it in writing might help, but if we can back it up. You talked about a number of places where you would, we would lose, say, federal funding for programs, and you referenced your own administrative code, and you brought up CFI. Can you make that connection? Like, do we have to have a provision in place that allows us to change these particular rules at any point in time to come into compliance with the federal law? Is that the issue? Like, I'm trying to make the connection. You follow me?
yes.
Thank you. It's Wendy, right?
And I'll ask
Wendy.
Brian to come up and
Oh, okay.
add to what I have to say. But for example, as part of our HEE 801 rules, we list all of the services that are offered through the Choices for Independence waiver, as well as provider requirements to operate the program. The law only extends to a certain degree. So in 151E, there's services listed, but they are not all of the services that are approved in our CFI waiver. So our administrative rules address all of the elements that are approved and are part of our CFI waiver that the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid approve.
Okay. I think I got it now. Thank you.
Here, I'll move over.
Thank you. Brian Clark, General Counsel for the Bureau of Elderly and Adult Services. I just want to make clear that for each rulemaking, we need to cite an authority where the legislator has given us the authority to adopt this rule. And for these administrative rules, we cited 151E12. If that's repealed, we wouldn't have the authority under our court rulemaking, and we would have to go back and repeal it or readopt with another authority. So this would effectively repeal our administrative rules.
I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So if I understand that there are certain aspects that you need to have the capability of doing this, but in the instance that the prime sponsor was talking about, where one of his constituents was impacted by the change, is there any way, or do you announce that there will be a change, and is it promoted out there so that people know?
Yes, extensively. Usually if we're engaging in rulemaking of providers, we do initial outreach to those providers to get their feedback. And this also includes when we're readopting the rule to prevent expiration. Then we also involve the MCAC committee, which providers are also involved with. And then there's the regular public hearing process where anyone, including impacted providers, can provide comment. And then the GELCAR process as the final step.
Are we presuming that it is a provider that would be his constituent?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for taking my question. I'm thinking in particular about the CFI program and which is a waiver program, correct? And to get that waiver approved, you have to submit that to the feds. And don't you have to, on that waiver, say that you're going to implement it and indicate how it's implemented through the regulations? So you're for the record, you all nodding yes.
Yes.
So
Sorry.
there it is. So is it correct that you wouldn't be able to implement the CFI program, which keeps people in their homes and prevents very expensive institutionalization? Just to be clear about what the CFI program is, we are keeping people at home, preventing institutionalization. You wouldn't be able to implement that program, correct, if this bill passed?
Correct. We wouldn't be able to have the oversight or the operational procedures in order to be able to implement the program.
Can you go over those loss of federal funds again? I think it was $45 million in the first fiscal year, $50 million roughly in the second, and obviously that would be ongoing.
Yes. Yes. And I thought I heard you say 36. It's for state fiscal year 25. We see it being 46,326,000.
Okay, so roughly 45 to $50 million annually. Okay. And further question. When we adopted Senate Bill 36 in HB 2 last year, we gave you a lot of new rulemaking authority. Is that not correct, to implement that program?
Yes, some of the legislation in HB2 for the Senate Bill 36 would or does require us to amend some of our rules and make state plan amendments for Medicaid.
Okay. And last question. So if the CFI waiver were denied because of lack of rulemaking authority, would it potentially impact other sources of Medicaid funding? I mean, for
Yes,
long-term nursing care,
Yes,
or
there would be nursing facility care is an entitlement. So we would be at risk of more individuals getting their care in an institution.
so it's not just 45 to $50 million is just the start. If we
It's
were to,
just the start.
okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none? Thank you. Alex? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Alex Katrubis. I'm here to represent the private nursing homes via their association, New Hampshire Healthcare Association, and the assisted living homes via their association, New Hampshire Arch Association of Residential Care Homes. We do oppose this legislation. I've handed you a letter from Brendan Williams, the CEO of the group, and I'm really just here to support the department. I agree with everything that was said. I work, as I think most of you know, I work with a lot of clients that either contract with or are heavily regulated by DHHS. In our experience in the rulemaking process, they go above and beyond the statutory requirements. As you heard, they have informal stakeholder feedback before the GELCAR process, and there's numerous opportunities for folks to have input. And I obviously respect Senator Lang, and I don't want to be up here opposing his bill. He actually filed a bill for the nursing homes last session that was enacted into law. But I do have to disagree with his statement about the ability to open the rules as needed, because I've actually worked with a lot of clients where we've been able to convince the agency to lessen regulation, and to have that ability to open the rule as needed can actually help make things more efficient. So if we were to tie the agency's hands, I think that could have some unintended consequences. So I certainly respect that he's trying to help a constituent, but this is, I mean, this would, as you heard, it would basically require a lot of administrative rules to be repealed. So we need to look very carefully before we do something like this. So respectfully, we do oppose it, and maybe there's a way that we can work with that constituent to try to solve their challenge without something so extreme as repealing all of these rules. So thank you very much.
Well, then if you're going to say that, then Alex, why don't you connect with the senator and see what issues his constituent had?
I will,
Be careful what you wish for.
yes, we're all, yes, I'm happy to try and help. I don't think I can in this situation, but I'm always happy to try to help bring folks together and move things forward.
Great, thanks.
So happy to try that.
All right. Kate Horgan,
Thank you.
and Kate is our last speaker on this bill. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kate Horgan. I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire Association of Counties, in this case particularly the 11 county nursing homes. I want to echo the comments from the department and from Alex. The association is opposed to this bill. The association believes the current jail car system is the appropriate method to make changes, and our experience has been the same as the private nursing homes as well. The department goes above and beyond to make sure that we are aware that things are happening, that we need to participate. And if we aren't participating, then there's, no one to blame but ourselves if we don't like the rule, right? So we make sure that we're involved. We make sure that we are there and participating with the rules. And with that, I will conclude my testimony. I'm happy to take any questions.
I see no volunteer in your.
No, I learned my lesson.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Kate was our last speaker. We have two people that have signed in opposition. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on Senate Bill 405 that was not given the opportunity?
Could I just ask that the department put your testimony into a written letter for us, please? Thank you.
All right. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 405, and when the clerk is ready, we will.
Like make way for ducklings only. Hey guys.
Welcome.
Good morning.
You all set? Okay. We will open the hearing on Senate Bill 500 and welcome the prime sponsor, Senator Perkins Coca. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good morning. Members of the committee, for the record, I am Senator Rebecca Perkins Coca from District 21, the city of Portsmouth and the surrounding towns. Today, I'm introducing SB 500, a bill relating to establishing a primary care provider loan repayment program and making an appropriation therefore. This bill was something that was brought to me by one of my constituents, but also my doctor. In conversation, she sees that, there's just a shortage of primary care, even in the Seacoast, where we happen to have a very healthcare rich economy. We have a lot of providers, and yet we have sort of a lack of primary care, which can usually be diagnostic, it can be preventative, it can be less expensive than going to a specialist. And, there are a myriad of issues that go into this, but part of it that she sees is that we need to take care to be recruiting new primary care providers in order to keep healthcare costs low across the board. The program that I proposed in this bill creates the loan repayment program, which offers qualifying primary care providers in New Hampshire assistance with repaying their student loans. There is a loan repayment program under federal law to provide assistance to loans for primary care providers who work in rural and underserved communities. This is also incredibly important, but we are seeing that there's a lack of primary care not only in these historically underserved areas, but also just across the state at this point. This is designed to mirror the setup of that federal program. It would help primary care providers who agree to work in the state for a certain amount of time to repay their loans. I will note that in the bill as introduced, there is a very large fiscal note attached. The intention of this is to serve, potentially as a pilot program or just for a program that would apply to new primary care providers. And so it may be that in conversation with the department, we can limit this fiscal note very much to just the second half that applies to new providers, or we can simply agree to make it a pilot program. But I would hope that through conversation, we can address the fiscal piece if that is anyone here's concern. This bill is intended to help provide a healthy state and make sure that we have the primary care providers to keep all of our costs low, including in the state budget. With that, I will take any questions.
Senator, Senator, do you have another copy of that fiscal note? Because I don't have it. Does anyone else have it?
Okay. It's in the version of the bill online, yeah.
Online, okay. I'll have,
although it's printed strange in my copy. Otherwise,
All
I
right,
would
I'll
just hand
have-
it to you.
I'll have Marie pull it off and send it to everybody,
Okay.
everyone.
All right.
Any
Thank
other,
you.
any questions from the committee? See none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whitney Hammond?
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for letting me take some time to testify. My name's Whitney Hammond, and I am the administrator for the Bureau of Prevention and Wellness, which is a unit within the Division of Public Health Services. Within that unit, we have our State Office of Rural Health and our Office of Primary Care. Both of those units are focused on promoting primary care and workforce in medically underserved areas of the state. So I'm here to just provide a little bit of context about the potential impact of this bill on those current efforts around primary care and rural health. And I do believe we provided the fiscal note worksheet for this, so if we need to follow up and give that to you, we can. So just for a little bit of context, we do have a state loan repayment program in New Hampshire. It is a little bit different in New Hampshire in that it is not federally funded. So in New Hampshire, we use state funding for our state loan repayment program. However, we do follow the guidelines of the federal state loan repayment program. That's to ensure alignment with the tax exemption that is a part of our state loan repayment. So those individuals who receive our state loan repayments do not need to pay taxes on those. If we deviate from the federal guidance, which requires that these providers practice in medically underserved areas, there's potential that they would need to pay taxes on their loan repayment. The other thing to be aware of is that the fiscal note was fairly large for this. And as the sponsor mentioned, I think thinking through how to operationalize this, if it were a pilot or, some kind of limitation on who's eligible to apply for these payments, you could potentially contain the costs that are in the fiscal note worksheet. But as the bill was written, it could be quite a large number of individuals that are eligible to get loan repayment. I did provide in the written testimony just a little more context around where in the state of New Hampshire people currently are not eligible for our state loan repayment program. And it's not a color copy, but it's the lightest shading on that map. Yeah, sorry about that. And there are, you'll see plus signs and dots in the lightly shaded areas, and that's because we have certain clinics that are also eligible for state loan repayment, even if they're not in a medically underserved area. And that tends to be our federally qualified health centers and our rural health clinics, which are just federally designated as serving medically underserved populations. This would be a new program. It would really deviate from the existing program. And so there would be the need to expand the number of staff that are working on this. And there could be some delays in terms of how quickly we were operational to actually provide loan repayment. I think that's it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Whitney. Ava, welcome. It's first time.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is a unique spot to be in this morning, but I'm happy to do it. For the record, my name is Ava Hawks. I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Medical Society, and the Medical Society strongly supports Senate Bill 500. I'll grab my copy from her if you don't mind. Thank you. Just want to make sure I cover those. There's a few in there. Okay, Senate Bill 500 is one piece of the puzzle in working to respond to the challenges in recruiting and retaining primary care providers in our state. This bill would offer much needed support to physicians in fields associated with primary care, of which are often the lowest paid specialties, by providing student loan repayment opportunities. Primary care providers are also experiencing high levels of burnout due to the healthcare workforce shortage, a shortage that we all are painfully aware was only exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. In a statement issued last fall by the American Medical Association's president, the organization called the physician shortage a public health crisis. And it's estimated that more than 83 million people in the U.S. currently live in areas without sufficient access to primary care physician. And New Hampshire is no exception. For these reasons, the Medical Society asks the Senate Health and Human Services Committee to recommend ought to pass on Senate Bill 500, which is an important step in helping address the primary care provider workforce shortage in our state and ultimately increasing access to this crucial health care. And I won't belabor that anymore because Senator Perkins Cogan did a great job of introducing the bill.
Senator Prentice.
Great. Thank you, Senator Birdsell, and good morning, Ava.
Good morning.
So thank you for taking my question. So is it your understanding that the primary care providers serve as almost like a traffic cop for moving patients who need referrals and specialty care, you know, the way we have the healthcare system set up now, on to the next step? And so with that, not having enough PCPs could actually keep people from getting the specialty care that they need?
That is exactly correct, Senator Prentice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none? Thank you, Ava.
Thank you.
Ava was our last speaker. Is there anyone that would like to speak on Senate Bill 500 that was not given the opportunity? With that, I will close the hearing on 500, and when the clerk is ready, we'll move on to our last bill. Oh, thank you. Sorry? Okay. Kate LeBlanc, you are signing in support, but you did not sign off whether you want to speak.
Oh, I apologize. I was helping her sign it and she does want to speak.
Okay. as well as Catherine Tucker. Okay. Okay. All right, I am opening the hearing on Senate Bill 558. And I welcome the prime sponsor, Senator Perkins Polka.
Good morning, Chairwoman again, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Senator Rebecca Perkins Quokka from Senate District 21, the city of Portsmouth and surrounding towns. I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 558, a bill relative to insurance coverage for infertility treatments, protection from discrimination during IVF treatments, parental leave, and adoption. We all want to see New Hampshire thrive. We want to see our residents, our families, and our workforce thrive. We want their lives outside of work to be as rich as their intellectual pursuits. Our job as policymakers is to set up a system where we can step aside and let our residents pursue their lives, empower them to achieve their dreams. For many, those dreams include having a family. These are hardworking people just like me, a girl from Stratham, mother of 3 lovely girls, general counsel at a small renewable company, wife to a mechanical engineer, daughter to a mother with health issues. We live complex lives that we make work every day, as you each do and did as you navigated and continue to navigate building your lives here in the state. However, one thing always remains true: change is constant. What it means to build a family in New Hampshire will always evolve, and today I'm here to address pieces that I, as a representative of my generation and our sorely needed workforce, believe are necessary to maintain our competitiveness and attract and retain the generation we need for our state, the state we all love, to continue to grow and thrive for generations. There are things I don't need to tell you that are related to this bill. Housing costs are high. In many cases, both parents or members of a household need to work to afford to be here. This leads to a house where our workers and parents are constantly multitasking, trying to be the employee they need to be, the citizen they need to be, the mother or father they want to be. Giving our parents and potential parents some simple protections as they build their families are such a critical piece of this puzzle. Workers are looking and comparing their lives in various states and places, and protections around building a family are increasingly a core piece of where people will choose to locate because their lives are busy, because it is so important, and because it is getting lost or not being valued by existing work arrangements. In families I talk to every day, which again are our workforce, the core of our economy, these concerns are on the forefronts of their lives. Women who contribute so much to our state are living in constant anxiety of whether they can get pregnant, balance their jobs, talk to their employer, leave work early for a doctor's appointment, and still demonstrate their commitment to work while trying to accomplish the goal of building a family. These are people we want to support. These are the people we value. We say we value them, but we need to demonstrate that through some simple pieces. This bill asks for insurance coverage for same-sex couples, expands our pregnancy discrimination statute to encompass the real situations our constituents deal with, and asks that PTO be treated as a separate benefit from any private parental leave that employers have provided. These are highly personal matters. One might argue that in today's employment market, employees have negotiating power to address some of these issues with their employers. Isn't everyone looking for talent these days? I would love that to be the case, but the reality is, as I come out of my 3rd maternity leave myself, that I talk to moms and dads every day who simply do not have these benefits. They are not on the table for negotiation, and they are important. Even in today's employment market, the issues are not being fully addressed. Doesn't that tell us something? Let us consider that our residents are still hard workers. They're still professionals. Could be that negotiating parental benefits and accommodation can feel like time you are asking away from your job, when in fact you are just trying to do your job better. Giving our residents the simple pieces in this bill will be small pieces in continuing to build a modern economy for our state. That modern economy recognizes that workers need different support pieces than were needed 30 or 40 years ago. If this feels novel, just talk to any employer out there. They will tell you that the workforce has changed, and our job is to support this new modern economy. Support these employers, support these employees, so that our small businesses can find the workers they need to thrive. Protections around IVF in particular are near and dear to my heart. They are protections that affect same-sex couples in particular, and how I was able to build the beautiful family I have now. These 3 beautiful girls make up such a big part of my beautiful life here in the state, and I just want that to be possible for everyone. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Senator Abart.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony, Senator. On page 1, line 11, it's infertility. It's changing the definition. Why is that?
So I have several people in this room who are much more equipped to speak to this than I am, but the intent is really just that all of our families can achieve the same starting line for diagnostic treatment for IVF. So same-sex couples sometimes, depending on, and this is a conversation we were just having in the hallway, sometimes face different hurdles to have access to insurance coverage for fertility treatment. And so we just want to try to equalize that. And it's in line with a change that was just made by sort of the National Society on this that reflects our evolving families.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Jason Azis. Welcome.
Good morning, Senator. My name is Jason Dexter. I'm with the New Hampshire Insurance Department. I have Jason Azes with me with the New Hampshire Insurance Department. If you need me to fill out a separate card, I'm happy to do so. We're here today. We just had a fairly robust conversation in the hallway. These folks are still learning, but we wanted to come today and at least provide some explanation of the fiscal note worksheets that we've provided on this particular bill, and then speak a little bit about some technical issues we see with the language. Last session, there was Senate Bill 198, which asked the Insurance Department to conduct a mandate study. It's a very broad bill, so we proceeded to do that, and I think Jason's going to provide some analysis of what we did with that particular study.
I'm sorry, did you say that was it Senate Bill 198 or?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so stemming off that, in the summer of 23, NHID conducted that mandate study for Senate Bill 198. We were aware of technical defects at that time in the original bill, and that limited the utility overall of the study. However, being aware of those issues, we instructed our vendor to model the cost analyses based on low, moderate, or high level of uptake if this bill were to become law. Consequently, we derived estimates ranging from $9.50 to approximately $100 per member per month, increases in premium that might ensue if this bill were to become law. For policy aims, in its current form, if this bill were to become law, it might result in expansion of coverage that's not related to medical necessity, creating a precedence that may pose challenges to managed care. I'd like to ask my colleague Jason to talk about that.
So just to speak a little bit to the mandate study, the language from Senate Bill 198, very different from what we have here today, which I think in learning in the hallway, they're trying to get at a little bit more of plan design and what has to happen up to receiving IVF treatment. So that is something that our study is somewhat helpful for, but I personally wouldn't rely on it if that's the only issue at hand. I think the language of the bill now, technically, I don't think gets them where they want to go, because it doesn't speak to the path to IVF. It just has this language of condition or status and leaves the definition of medically necessary in the bill, which I think we're all a little confused and concerned of how that's going to play out. So that, I think, is what we wanted to at least provide information for. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Senator Bradley.
Go ahead, let Senator Prentice go.
Senator Prentice.
So my first question is, do you all have a dress code at the Department of Insurance?
I only have 2 suits.
All right, so that, okay, now that we have that cleared up and that everybody's named Jason.
Yeah, exactly.
So did I hear you did an insurance mandate review on Senate Bill 198 called for an insurance mandate review? Correct? That's been completed.
It required it, yes.
Okay, required it. And maybe I didn't hear this correctly, so I want to clarify. Are you saying that some but not all of what was reviewed doesn't transfer over to 558?
Yeah,
Doesn't sound like there's a direct line.
there's not a direct line. Senate Bill 198 was very broad.
Okay.
It was even hard for us to interpret of what we were trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Whereas this bill is, at least for the insurance statutes, is narrower.
Okay.
It was, it wasn't a wild goose chase to figure out what we needed to kind of answer, but it was very broad and difficult to interpret.
Yeah. So, but does it give us a good basis for 558? Bring enough.
So as a note, the
Not having to-
original language considered this construct, this term, social infertility, and that was ambiguous. So our vendor started to define or try to define the eligible population, which is why we instructed them to model it almost in a titration format, low, moderate, or high, not really knowing what the true eligible population would be. So that might be noteworthy in the report to interpret and translate that to, with this narrower definition that Jason just mentioned. Your estimates might lean towards the lower or moderate side and not the inflated high side of that because of a narrower definition which constrains the eligible population. And so this Senate Bill 558 has a more concisely defined eligible population by having changed the infertility definition.
I'm good for now.
Is that all right?
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. You said that the coverage may pose problems to managed care somehow?
Yeah, so that when you try to analyze the issue, the question becomes, are you tweaking medically necessary and what that means? And there's still debate about that with the folks that were talking for 20 minutes in the hallway. Some would argue it's not, but our point is medical necessity is really the foundation of managed care, and it ties to diagnosis. And so we wouldn't want to see a bill that moved medically necessary out of the world of medical diagnosis.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Just to clarify that a little further, my understanding of the bill is that we are looking to allow families, same-sex couples, to also get coverage from their insurance companies for IVF. So the basis for usual coverage is whether a woman is infertile, right? And so that may not be a medical issue. That's the barrier for a same-sex couple. So that's what my understanding, what we're trying to do here. So I didn't know if there was any other avenues other than changing the definition of fertility to get us where we want to be.
I think what I heard in the hallway was a little different, that folks seem to agree you can get to IVF under the current statute. The problem is what is out of pocket for the same gender couple versus what wouldn't be out of pocket for a non-same gender couple. So I think how to draft it to get to that point, that becomes a plan design issue, not a coverage issue, and a cost issue. So if it's covered, if everyone seems to agree it's covered, then it's a price issue.
Follow up? So in terms of the review that was done, I think it's important that sort of all stakeholders have a say. So I'm wondering sort of the involvement of providers that are actually providing this, trying to get the coverage on behalf of their patients. What was the involvement of providers in that extensive review?
We don't do the reviews ourselves. We have a vendor that does the review. We had Friedman at the time. I believe you have a new vendor pending. I don't know the extent that they spoke with actual providers. Do you?
Not in our state, but Massachusetts had a similar bill, and on our vendor team were several medical providers, so much of the work centered around the challenges with defining the eligible population as it was defined in the original language of the bill, which is again why we suggested having 3 tiers of uptake for the policymakers who have this important decision to make, to try to narrow down their prediction of what might be the true relative and absolute cost if this bill were to become law. I think that's important to remember. And since then, the definition, I think, in the current form has changed a little bit, which will challenge your ability to refine your interpretus for that report. So I think that they cited much the parallel legislation in the state of Massachusetts and what happened there as the framework to define the eligible population for this study.
Thank you. I was looking for Senate Bill 198, 2020. I didn't go back that far. Okay, that's why. All right, so in looking at the fiscal note, that's where the $9.50 to $100.30 comes from, right? So is it based on this language change that's being proposed, or is it based on the prior study?
It's based on the original bill.
Okay. And what is the difference between the original bill and this bill in terms of the definition?
I think that the definition of infertility is one of the key changes, and they use the term condition or status, and then subsequent to that, it goes on to mention impairment. And so I think the term status wasn't necessarily clear. Is it a physical, physiological, a biological status, or a social status? And I think that was the part that I know when we worked with our vendor, we struggled on it, interpreting that definition. And so because of that, unclarity, we wanted to make a note of that for this opportunity.
Okay. So my last question, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe it was in 2018, possibly 2019, when Senator Martha Hennessy and others, and I see some of the same people in the room, and I think Senator Avard, you'll remember that bill that we actually covered infertility as a treatment. Does the department, have you done any studies as to the per member per month changes that might have happened as a result of that change, that when we added infertility into a covered mandate, basically?
Not to my awareness.
Okay. All right. So then it would be safe to assume, and I'm trying to remember the testimony, and others can correct me if I'm wrong, that the testimony at that time was a relatively affordable cost, especially for somebody in that predicament that needed infertility treatment. Would I be correct in that assumption? Because I believe that was the testimony back 4 or 5 years ago.
One thing I would say about that is that law is limited to the large group, doesn't apply to individual or small group market by design. So I think my guess is the large group market, you had some providers that already, or some carriers that already opted for that coverage, and some that didn't, and then just brought the rest of them along. But that's something we could look at. Certainly run those try to get those numbers.
Thank you, and thank you again for taking my question. You mentioned the terminology medically necessary. If we tweak that and open up that door to changing the meaning of that definition, what are some of the consequences of that?
Well, I think you have the definition of medically necessary in two locations. You have it in the managed care statute 420J, and it's ultimately based on a model. There's two models that I've seen across states, and the model that we used the last time I checked, there were 20 plus that follow that same model. All managed care is based on that law. They put in, or that model, in 417G, they have a definition of managed care, which I think, or I'm sorry, of medical necessity, which ties back to, I believe, what is in 420J. So I think that those are all based on good clinical practice. And I think if we were to end up tweaking medical necessity, say for the purpose of this statute, that creates, it's a bit of a slippery slope issue where you're not paying, if you're not going to pay, or you're going to require payment for certain treatments that it's not based on a medical diagnosis. That is, health insurance is for medical treatment. So you end up, what's the next bill? What's the next bill? That's the argument you'll hear.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kate LeBlanc.
Good morning.
Morning.
I need these now. Good morning, Chair Birdsell and members of the committee. My name is Kate Weldon LeBlanc, and I am a former infertility patient myself, and I'm also the executive director of a nonprofit called Resolve New England, which provides emotional support, education, and advocacy to anyone that's struggling with fertility and family building. And I'm really happy to be here to testify in support of Senate Bill 558 as amended, the Modern Economy Act. When states like New Hampshire support families in modest, practical ways, the state will reap the economic benefits of this. And this is especially important in a beautiful but aging state like yours, the Granite State. We remain ever grateful to the New Hampshire legislature for passing the insurance law in 2019. And thank you, Senator Bradley, again for your leadership on that bill. And the day that it passed the Senate unanimously was one of the best days of my career. And I think a large part of the reason it had bipartisan support and was signed by Governor Sununu was because of the economic benefits of supporting families when they're trying to grow and stay here in New Hampshire. We hear regularly from grateful people who have been able to become parents because of that law. And we get their pictures of their families. So I hope you get to see those too, because you really made that possible. And so I see today as just the next extension of that, which is just sometimes we learn things that should have been clarified as they are implemented. So part of Senate Bill 558 is updating the definition of infertility to make it more inclusive. And adding the word status, to respond to your question, was really to address a situation like the senators, which is they may not have, she and her wife may not have a disease of infertility, but they are infertile. They cannot conceive on their own without fertility treatment. And so we're not trying to get rid of the medical necessity term. We're not trying to update that definition. We're just trying to have, just to use the senator as an example, if she doesn't mind, is to have her and her wife get basically to the same starting line that my husband and I did, having infertility and just being able to self-report that we had been trying unsuccessfully for a certain amount of time. Currently, we hear from many couples like the senator who they have to pay out of pocket for the fertility treatment equivalent of my husband and I trying privately. And that's obviously a huge cost difference. We had no cost to trying unsuccessfully for our duration of time, where the senator and her wife would have to pay for each of those cycles of insemination. So I hope that helps explain what we're trying to achieve. And this is consistent with the trend that our field is going in, is to not see it as exclusively a traditional medical disease model, but to look at it more broadly. So in the fertility field, our national clinical association is called the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. And just last year, they expanded their definition of infertility, similar to what we're trying to achieve in this bill, to be more inclusive of the various people who need fertility treatment to try to achieve their dream of parenthood. And also, I want you to know it's not like we're just trying this here and no one else is talking about this. Illinois and Maine already have inclusive definitions of who needs fertility treatment, and many other states are considering it as well. And fertility coverage has already had positive economic impacts on New Hampshire. Boston IVF, for example, created and opened their beautiful full-service IVF center in Bedford, New Hampshire, as a direct response to this law passing in 2019. And that's just an example of how investing in modest ways in building families will really help the Granite State in many ways. I'm grateful that Senate Bill 558 clarifies that there should be protected leave for important medical care appointments, including fertility treatments such as IVF. I also want to clarify that this bill is not all about IVF. There's lots of other types of fertility treatment, and many LGBTQ couples are going to be successful through insemination. They will not have to go all the way to IVF. I also want to mention that the cost study that was previously referenced, to our knowledge, no providers or advocates were consulted as part of that study. I received one email about the study, and I responded just a few days later because I think it was in the summer, and they told me it was already done. And none of our other counterparts had heard from anyone. So I'm not sure who they consulted, but that range of costs is something we have not seen in any state in the country. It's by far and my colleague and friend is going to speak to that more directly, but I just want to assure you, Massachusetts really should not be the model. New Hampshire's law was different than Massachusetts. It's better in many ways than Massachusetts. So I ask that you please report this bill as ought to pass. We obviously want to address, if we can agree that we want similar goals, then obviously we want to get the language of the bill right to make that happen. And we're happy, as always, to collaborate on doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none.
Okay, thank you.
Catherine Tucker? Welcome.
Good morning, members of the committee, Madam Chair. My name is Catherine Tucker. I am an attorney, longtime resident of Concord. I've been a resident now of Laconia for the past 3 days. I myself, like the previous speaker, myself and my husband, we went through infertility, and we were very fortunate at the end that we were able to go through treatment and finally have 2 children. So I'm very grateful for that. And because of my experiences, I decided, hey, I'm going to, open a fertility law practice, and I'm just going to practice exclusively fertility law. So that's what I do now. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was this cost study that was done. Can I just pass
Right
these?
over here.
Thank you. So this was a letter I wrote to the insurance department about my concerns with the cost study results. So one of the things that the cost study with the instructions that were in SB 198 were to take a look at the cost savings that can come from healthcare providers using best practices when they treat these patients. And the reason I say that is that has been previously proven a tremendous cost savings when we reduce the incidence of multiples pregnancies. Triplets, twins, very expensive. These babies end up in the NICU. That's very expensive for the healthcare very expensive for the insurance companies. The insurance companies are paying, easily $1 million for a baby that's in the NICU. And what can we do to prevent that? We can have a singleton pregnancy and have a nice, healthy, full-term singleton pregnancy without the NICU costs. And Senator Bradley, you're absolutely correct that when we were here in 2019, we did talk about this being a very modest price increase because those cost savings would come in when providers were doing their best to have a singleton pregnancy and not twins and triplets, which, you know, everybody wants twins and triplets because they think one and done. It's not so easy at all. And I have twins myself. So this was a long time ago, back when twins were still considered an acceptable result in the fertility field. They are no longer an acceptable result. Right now, the acceptable result is a singleton pregnancy. But folks who are paying out of pocket, including folks who are paying out of pocket for sperm, which can get very expensive, or paying out of pocket for a gestational carrier, they all want twins and triplets. Get it over with. They see the cost savings. They don't look at the actual costs associated with having twins. And not only do we have those NICU costs, which for my own kids were $1 million. Okay, we're talking a lot of money for one pregnancy. But then you have kids who end up having long-term healthcare costs that need to be covered by insurance. You end up with kids who need special education services, which are paid for by the taxpayers. There's a lot of other costs that are also involved with this. So when SB 198 came before the legislature, we explained that it was very important to think about cost savings from reducing multiples pregnancies. And they refused in their cost study. They said that has absolutely no relevance. We're not even going to think about it. They didn't even do any of that actuarial financial work to figure out what the savings would be. So that, really left us kind of stumped, as, this was an integral part of doing the cost study, and they refused to do it. They took the state's money and provided a report, but it only did half the work that they were asked to do for that money. So that has been a significant concern of mine with regards to the cost study. A lot of other things in the cost study that I think are problematic. People are double counted. For example, if my husband and I would go and see fertility treatment, we're going to have one pregnancy. And it's the same thing when Senator Perkins' language that will do what we want it to do without causing additional problems for people in other areas of the law. So I know that the senator has an amendment that she's been working on. But, perhaps, we need to go back to the table and have some more discussions with other folks and, try to come up with the best language that isn't going to cause problems.
It's a great idea. Any questions from the committee? Go ahead.
Have you shared this letter with the insurance department?
I have.
Go on.
Sorry for the juggle. Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Devin Quinn. I'm the Director of Policy for the New Hampshire Women's Foundation, where we invest in equality and opportunity for the women and girls of New Hampshire through research, education, advocacy, and grant making. We're here in support of SB 558, the Modern Economy Act, because women make the economy work. But we need to make the economy work better for them. Certainly, in regards to insurance coverage for fertility treatment, people who want to start a family should be able to do so in New Hampshire regardless of their sexuality. And it is so important to provide equitable access to fertility care. The folks who went before me have a greater expertise on this, but I also want to mention the other aspects of this bill that are also really important here too. This bill also expands the requirement that employers provide time off for pregnancy-related appointments to also include appointments for fertility care, postpartum care, pregnancy loss. Right now, everyone knows that if you need to take time off to go to a prenatal appointment, you should be able to do that, and your employer should let you do that. But it's not just prenatal appointments, it's also postpartum appointments, it's also appointments for fertility treatment, and there's so much more that goes into building a family and the appointments that go into that. Those should also be covered in that. I also gave you a copy of a letter from Dr. Janet Perkins. The first sentence in the second paragraph, she says, "My patients who are undergoing fertility treatments or who have experienced the loss of a baby or are suffering from debilitating postpartum anxiety and depression are some of the most vulnerable patients I have ever cared for. It goes without saying that they generally need more medical attention, not less." So this really provides that coverage in workers and employees to be able to take that time. The other aspect of this bill that is so important is also prohibiting an employer from requiring that an employee use or exhaust their PTO as a condition of parental leave. So this it would apply to employers that do offer parental leave. It's not requiring parental leave, but those that do offer parental leave, sometimes do so as a benefit, like wages and a 401k and parental leave as a benefit. But a lot of times folks don't realize that the job that they really wanted, because it offered parental leave, in the fine print, it says that you can't use it until you've exhausted your sick and vacation time. But once you come back from parental leave, guess what happens? Babies get sick, and they get sick a lot. And when you don't have access to sick time, once you come back from that parental leave, that contributes to a compounding factor that makes it very difficult for particularly women to stay in the workforce and stay in the workforce full time. We talk about having access to childcare as an issue of economic growth, particularly for women, but part of childcare is also figuring out who's going to care for a child during sick time. So this is an important part of making sure that we can support women who are working in the backbone of our economy.
Thank you, Devin. Any questions? Senator Whitley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for raising that issue about, the important role that women have in our economy, particularly when we are experiencing a workforce shortage. I'm wondering if you're sort of aware of those statistics that we heard, or any updates to it, about the fact that during the pandemic, we saw a dramatic departure, like 10% of our population of women ages 25 to 34. So, women that are having babies. And we just haven't gotten them back. Have you heard any updates about that, and efforts like this, how that would improve getting women back into the workforce?
We are still working on, economic drivers are still trying to recruit women back into the workforce. And part of that is not as black and white of fully out of the workforce, back into the workforce. It's also part of reducing hours. And we see a lot of particularly mothers of younger families reducing hours and going part-time or switching their roles because they can't be in person full-time in their teaching role or nursing profession because those hours don't work for them, or they can't do it full-time because they can't get childcare or don't have sick time to. It's a compounding impact when mothers and parents, families just can't make work and parenting work.
Follow up? I was one of those parents. I had my son 10.5 years ago. I used vacation time, sick time. I borrowed next year's sick vacation time, went back to work part-time. My mom was with my son, couldn't get childcare. I left practicing law when he was 2, couldn't make it work. So I am grateful for you raising those opportunities and issues, because I was one of those parents.
Thank you. I'm one of those parents right now too.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks.
Mackenzie?
She would have been on the second sign-in sheet.
I don't have a second sign-in sheet. No, never mind. I got it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Liz Scruton, and I'm here to shed light on the urgent necessity for your support on this important bill. And thank you to Devin and Mackenzie. Devin brought up some really wonderful points that I didn't say, so let's hope I can tick off some other ones. My husband and I are currently grappling with the challenge of infertility, specifically needing egg donation, and the financial strain is substantial, with projected out-of-pocket costs surpassing $30,000, not including our maximum out-of-pocket deductible. This financial burden persists despite some of my procedures being covered under my health insurance. This bill would, for instance, would help cover testing such as the genetic testing required by clinicians. This is a crucial step for us in moving forward with donor egg IVF, but is deemed not medically necessary by insurance. Upon receiving this bill in the past 2 months, we found that the testing amounted to over $5,000, and it is not something that I can apply to my deductible. This bill addresses critical facets of infertility treatments, discrimination protected during IVF, parental leave, and adoption. But what it doesn't talk about is the mental health of all of these participants. So for everyone that is struggling with infertility, we also have to remind ourselves that mental health takes a toll, and that can be cost savings in addition to what was already discussed earlier. Your support of this bill extends beyond my personal journey, and it stands for countless others facing struggles. So this is a great opportunity to contribute to more inclusive and supportive environment for families all over the Granite State. Thank you so much for your time, and I urge you to support this.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mackenzie? And I just want to let the committee know that I do want to exec 2 other bills today, so we will be here. 497 and 399. Yep, I think you all have got an amendment. I know Marie sent it out. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. You're doing good work. Thank you, Chairwoman Birdsell and members of the committee for having me today, and thank you for your flexibility allowing our mom to speak so she could get back to work. I'm excited to be before your committee again today to talk in favor of Senate Bill 558, the Modern Economy Act. As many of you know, my name is Mackenzie Nicholson. I'm the Senior Director for Moms Rising in New Hampshire, representing thousands of moms and our families across the Granite State. I'm sure you won't be surprised again to hear me say that Moms Rising really cares about moms, and not just anybody who's a mom, but anybody who's ever loved a mom or had a mom. This bill would have a significant impact on moms who are raising our families here by doing a lot of the things that the speakers before me talked about today. Moms Rising supports increasing access to fertility treatments to all families through insurance coverage. For many families, the cost of fertility treatments, like Liz talked about earlier, is an enormous barrier that they can't overcome. Many of our members have shared with us that costs for fertility treatments can extend well beyond tens of thousands of dollars. By addressing barriers to treatment for families who wish to become pregnant, we're continuing to support the reproductive rights of women and birthing people in New Hampshire. It's important that this coverage be inclusive of all New Hampshire families, which is why we also want to call attention to the amendments that are being drafted to make this legislation more explicitly LGBTQ+ friendly. While New Hampshire does have workplace protections for pregnant people, we're missing a group of folks right now who are currently seeking IVF treatments, who are experiencing pregnancy loss or receiving postpartum care. To your question earlier, Senator Whitley, more than 85% of women become mothers at some point in their lives, and more than 40% of those women are breadwinners in that family. And if we looked back at historical data, we would see that just right as the pandemic had started, it was actually about 50% of women who were breadwinners, which to me suggests that women are leaving the workforce. We proudly endorse the expansion and protections for pregnant people and postpartum workers embedded in this legislation, which will help to build a more modern economy, which recognizes, respects, and values the unique experience of pregnant women and birthing people in New Hampshire. A shocking 65%, and probably more now, 65% of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck. So when workers are forced to choose between their health and work, I'm sure you can imagine it has dire consequences on their economic security. Without these protections in place, some of our most vulnerable Granite Staters may be without an income at a moment when they need it the most, searching for a job in a market biased against hiring pregnant people and new moms. Furthermore, and since you've heard me talk before about how the United States is the most dangerous place in the world to give birth, especially if you are a woman of color, it's imperative that postpartum medical appointments are attended to ensure that patients are receiving critical care so that they can be assessed for issues that may lead to further complications like postpartum depression, something that contributes significantly to maternal mortality. And I'll just say lastly that it's a true goal of Moms Risings to make sure that every worker in the nation has access to paid family medical leave. But unfortunately, that's not the reality we find ourselves in right now. And like Devin mentioned, a lot of people find themselves saving that PTO for the unexpected emergencies that come up, like your sick kiddo has COVID and then a stomach bug and RSV, which has been happening in our household right now. By prohibiting employers from requiring that their employees spend down that PTO before that leave can be utilized, we're ensuring that families have the financial stability they need to survive and thrive, and that they still have their PTO available for when they need it. The Modern Economy Act is a continuation of the excellent work that came out of your committee from Momnibus and some of the great maternal health expansions that we worked on last year. We're very excited to continue to work with you all. We urge for your support for Senate Bill 558, the Modern Economy Act, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you,
Thank you.
Mackenzie. I have the two last speakers. Brianna, you're up next, and then Heidi, you're last. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Brianna. I work at New Futures. I'm the legal policy fellow. New Futures is a nonpartisan nonprofit that works to increase access to quality, affordable healthcare and improve health equity across Granite State. Senate Bill 558 will partially continue will work to work to increase equal access to fertility treatment. IVF related appointments are similar to pregnancy related appointments. So if more access to IVF treatment, then people will also need appointments for doctors. And for the last part of SB 558, employers need to be able to be well to go to work, and it's vital to have families have a healthy workspace. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. And Heidi is our last speaker. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Heidi Kroll. I work at Gallagher, Callahan, and Gartrell, and I'm here today representing AHIP, which is America's Health Insurance Plans. We're the trade association for the health insurance carriers. So as mentioned earlier, we did have some hallway conversations, and I think we'll probably be following up on those. We do have concerns with SB 558. As you heard, it's a follow-up bill to a similar bill from last year, SB 198. So from our reading of it, SB 558 seeks to expand coverage of New Hampshire's current infertility coverage mandate, which is set forth in RSA 417G, to all enrollees in fully insured health insurance plans on the group side, employer side, by eliminating medical necessity requirements. And it does so by changing the definition of infertility, where it's removing a phrase caused by an illness, injury, underlying disease, or condition. And so the new definition from our read would include individuals whose ability to become pregnant is impaired for non-medical reasons. We would be very concerned about removing medical necessity, which, as you heard from the insurance department, is a cornerstone of health insurance. And when we did negotiate this bill, or this chapter of law back in 2019, when the carriers and the advocates got together, we negotiated as part of that chapter a mutual agreement to include the definition for medical necessity in the chapter. And I'll just read that to you briefly because it's not that long. It says that medically necessary means healthcare services or products provided to an enrollee for the purpose of preventing, stabilizing, diagnosing, or treating an illness, injury, or disease, or the symptoms of an illness, injury, or disease in a manner that is consistent with generally accepted standards of medical practice, clinically appropriate in terms of type, frequency, extent, site, and duration, demonstrated through scientific evidence to be effective in improving health outcomes, representative of best practices in the medical profession, and not primarily for the convenience of the enrollee or physician or other healthcare provider. So we are concerned that if we remove medical necessity as it relates to access to fertility care, it will not only increase healthcare costs significantly for the fertility care here in New Hampshire, but many other advocates for many other coverage mandates are likely to want to come to the legislature looking for fair and equitable treatment by removing medical necessity as it relates to the other mandates. Obviously, that would have a very large cost impact. From the carrier's perspective, under the current law, everyone who seeks access to fertility care under RSA 417G goes through the same set of steps. Everyone is held to the same medical necessity standards, and the process, from our perspective, is fair and equitable to everyone. There are two anti-discrimination laws in the insurance statutes themselves, RSA 415:15 and RSA 420G:6 Roman 3C. And furthermore, in the fertility care statute itself, 417G, also includes a provision that prohibits discrimination under RSA 354A. So we have multiple anti-discrimination provisions, and carriers, are carrying out their processes and procedures consistent with those. As you heard discussion earlier with the insurance department, we did have the mandate review that was released September 15th of 2023. That's an actuarial examination. It's kind of not a broader type of review, and the findings are captured in the fiscal note, and as the department already mentioned, a wide range of a cost per member per month premium cost increase, anywhere from $9.50 up to $100.30. Even something on the low end of that would still, arguably be a meaningful increase to people. Few last points. Wanted to point out that the mandate currently and any changes to it only applies to employer group fully insured plans, so not plans in the individual market, the self-funded markets, coverage from out-of-state employers who don't have brick and mortar here in New Hampshire, and of course, we're not talking about Medicaid either. So we just want to be sensitive to that. As I've mentioned at other times, this portion of the insurance market is somewhere around 20 to 21% of the market. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. And as the chairwoman mentioned earlier, we're happy to have conversations with the advocates. We've not had any outreach up until the hallway conversation, so happy to try to see if there's any, common understandings that we can come to.
Thank you, Heidi. Senator Abar.
Thank you, and thank you, Heidi, for your, because the whole thing with me right now is the whole definition of medically necessary and how it would affect the actuaries in future policies after we open up this door. Are other areas of definitions what does this do? How does this metastasize into other things, if you will, of that? Okay, we have one medical definition for this and another one for this. Does it skew things?
So medical necessity, medically necessary. Like I said, we do have that definition right in the infertility or access to fertility care statute, and it's elsewhere in insurance laws as well. So that is, a cornerstone of insurance. So if we start to migrate away from medical necessity, as I mentioned, it would concern us because it, I think really could open up care that is not medically necessary, and with that would come a lot of cost to the healthcare system, cost to health insurance coverage, premiums, co-pays, and that sort of thing. So I think that is why, as drafted, we do have those concerns.
Senator Bradley.
So I guess this is a question posed to everybody in the room. what if we were to retain the medical necessity language because it has the word condition in it in the current statute, and added status to that definition? Isn't that then trying to, at least the testimony that we've received about same-sex couples, individuals who are not married, not having access to it, because obviously somebody in that circumstance can't become pregnant.
Right.
I'm assuming that the carriers are not opposed to that, because the intent is to cover it for infertility. So if you added that, what would be the problem?
So I think we need to look at where the tweak needs to be made, if a tweak needs to be made at all. So this is just me talking personally. I haven't had a chance to, talk with the carrier since the hallway conversation, whether I would steer away from amending medical necessity. I would hone in on the definition of infertility, but I do think we also need to we need to dig deeper with the advocates, because from the conversation out in the hallway, it was not clear to me about some of this maybe being planned design and just and covered benefits, and who is doing the covering, whether it's a fully insured plan, a self-funded plan, an employer out of state. So I think there's pieces there that we just
So that
need to
was
sort
going to
out.
be my second question. I mean, we heard testimony from the insurance department that the existing law, the 2019 law, only applies to the large group market. As I read this, it does not expand into the individual market.
That is correct.
Okay.
Right. That is,
So-
it would continue
All right.
to read that each health carrier that issues or renews any group policy, plan, or contract, and that
All right.
language is repeated
Okay.
throughout.
So that,
Yep.
that clarifies that.
Yep.
I would hope, and I'm just speaking for myself, that the carriers can find a way to work with the advocates to include status, because I think that is important, because there's just no way for somebody in those categories to become pregnant.
Right.
And the whole purpose of insurance is to cover that. So I think that the hallway conversations are going to expand. They better expand. Because your members have only signed up in opposition to the way it's currently drafted. Yes, I'm looking at you. And Sabrina, you haven't even signed up. And Lindsay has left the room. So please work it out, okay? I guess is
Yeah,
what
I'll
am
say that we
saying.
hadn't been
Because my
approached.
third question is, the supposition that we had in 2019 is that this was a fairly nominal cost. And as you know, I've supported some mandates and I've opposed some mandates, and it comes down to, reasonable cost benefit analysis. And I think that based on all the testimony we heard in 2019, if you wanted a reasonable cost benefit analysis, the law that we passed in 2019 got that. And so I guess my question is, based on AHIP's research in other states, is that wrong?
I would have to check with AHIP about cost benefit analysis. I don't have that information. My understanding is that the coverage, or the chapter in New Hampshire law, the coverage that we provide is pretty generous and broader, I think, on a spectrum of what's
But
covered.
I guess then my next question, and this would be for the New Hampshire carriers, have you found that it is, driven up costs by anything approaching that $9 to $100 per member per month?
So to be clear, I think that $9 to $100 was based on SB 198.
Okay.
So I don't believe that was intended to be.
But as I'm looking at this, I mean, with the exception of the medical leave, which is a different category in my view, including status really doesn't make a change, except for it covers more people that can't be physically covered by virtue of.
Right, and I
their
think that's
status.
part of the confusion in the conversation we were having out in the hallway, because from the carrier's perspective, as far as we know, we don't ask, and we don't know that providers ask what your status is, married, single,
So
you know,
that gets back
except-
to my point
so-
that this is a nominal cost.
So the question, so our question, I think we just need to work with the advocates
Okay,
to try to
all right.
figure
Sorry
out.
to be a
yeah.
jerk, Madam.
Understood.
That's my job.
Senator Prentice.
Thank you. And so first, I thank you, Senator Bradley, for your comments. I think lobby or hallway discussions can be very fruitful and bring us to, bring us to solutions. And I think that that is the point of a lot of the work that we do is solutions. Yes, that was a hallway conversation. And-
Hello, can we get back to?
Yes, yes, ma'am. But here's okay. So here's my question for you. Other mandates that you mentioned, opening the door. I feel like I wish I'd asked this before Senator Bradley spoke, but I just want to bring it up. What other examples can you give to if this were to be put into place, that are other mandates that you feel like would open this large door? Because what I'm trying to do is draw equity between this proposal and what those mandates would represent.
So my point simply is that medical necessity is an underpinning to every decision around what's covered in health insurance. So, as an example, medical necessity includes in the definition clinically appropriate in terms of type, frequency, extent, site, and duration. So if we were to get rid of medically necessary or medical necessity in other mandates, that provision alone would be you'd lose all of those guardrails that are provided there. So I don't have specific examples. I mean, we use medical necessity throughout insurance coverage. So, you could imagine a situation where all of a sudden we're, for example, on site, we always try to get people to the lowest cost site of care. It's good for them in terms of what they might have to pay out of pocket. It's good for the system. It frees up the locations that handle higher acuity for the people who actually need to be in the higher acuity location. So it could be a far-reaching ripple effect. And I'm not saying, I think there are probably better ways that this bill could be drafted. So, but we were commenting on the way it's currently drafted.
Okay, thank you so much, Heidi.
Okay, any other questions? Then I trust that the prime sponsor and the stakeholders will get together and. Sabrina, did you want to talk?
I can see it.
Come on up.
Up to 9 to 10.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Sabrina Dunlap. I'm Director of Government Relations for Anthem. I just wanted to clarify that currently IVF is covered regardless of marital status or, sexual orientation. What we were discussing out in the hallway, which I think was a very helpful conversation, was the steps taken to get to IVF to demonstrate that you need IVF. So I just wanted to clarify, though, that under the current law, carriers treat everyone the same. We don't ask what your status is. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Sabrina, the question I have is, I don't think we're questioning whether it's covered or not, but at the amount of what the amount that the copay is that where the difference is?
So we got into that actually because I was commenting that the law itself says IVF needs to be covered for large group, but then you start to get into anecdotes of something being covered or not, and you start to get into benefit design. Do you have a self-insured plan? Maybe your employer doesn't cover IVF. Maybe your plan doesn't cover IUI or other steps to get to IVF. I don't know. It gets very complicated. So we started to have that conversation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for clarifying, specifically that Anthem doesn't ask regarding status. I think that's important for us to know. I think what we don't know is whether every carrier does or does not ask about status. And so I think, hopefully the carriers won't oppose just sort of clarifying in the law regarding that status. So that's what we're looking for.
Makes sense. Thank you. I
Any-
appreciate it.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none? Thank you. And I have decided, again, that we will not be executing.
Okay.
That'll give you guys, I apologize. I didn't give you a heads up. I just kind of thought that when you guys got the amendments, you would think about it. But next week, we will be execing at least 399 and 497.
Any other ones?
I don't know yet. I'll give you a heads up.
Thank you.
I have copies of it if you need it. But I think it did because Cam's not here.
I don't think that it made its way to us. I did a quick search through.
What did I do with it? Oh.
Thank you.
It's 0125S. And this was agreed on by all parties, so.
Okay, good.
Redheaded stepchild over here.
Ah, that's a copy for you. All right. I guess I should close the close the hearing on Senate Bill 497.
Second.